Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. This is Manhattan Community Board 1's full board session for October. The first thing that we actually have on our agenda tonight is the Community Board 1 capital and budget expense requests for year 2022. It's a public hearing aspect. So I'm going to open it up for anyone who wishes to speak for the public hearing about the budget. If so, please raise your hand. I do not see any signups topically about the budget in specific. So I'm going to look for raised hands. Anyone looking? Hey, hearing nothing, seeing nothing, like crickets over here.
In the attendee section.
Okay. Fantastic. Oh, that's Taylor. Okay, let's unmute Taylor. This is for budget purposes for the public hearing. Taylor, we're going to unmute you. Go ahead now, please.
Hi, good evening. This is Taylor Banning. I'm a resident of Battery Park City, and this is relating to budgets for this year. The Borough President, it seems like, announced New York City's Human Rights Watch provided bias trainings on various topics like LGBTQIA plus rights, and I heard they were really positive, but they were only live, and then recordings were not available. And so I was wondering if maybe a budget request could be funding and access for more of these, and maybe updated annually, so that once a training is provided to community board members, the recording then be posted to all community board sites, so that both the public and members can access at a date that works better for them. Because I know timing was an issue for many people. And then it could maybe even be mandatory for some of these to be viewed by members by the end of, a time period or something. But then the community could also have access to them since they're very valuable. And I know a lot of community is looking for these trainings. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Taylor. Looking through the sign-in sheet, I don't see anybody else who is looking to speak specifically on our budget. Do I see any other hands up?
No hand up, but is that something that could be added to the budget or no? Or is that not the process now?
When we get there to the budget conversation in the business session. Okay, we'll discuss that. Mariama, budget?
Same thing. I was going to ask if there was a friendly amendment or something that I could make to, support that, because I actually did get to see. Okay.
Hang on and wait for it to come. No problem. Anybody else for budget session? Okay. And looking, I see no one else who has noted about budget for the sign-in sheet. So with that, and no hands raised, we're going to close the public hearing on the capital budget. Okay, and directly go to public session. So for the public session, we do have quite a few people who have signed up to speak. We're going to start with our elected officials first, and then we will move on to members of the public. Our public officials get 4 to 5 minutes of time. Members of the public have 2 to 3 minutes, and Lucy, I believe, will be our timer tonight. So let's start and see. I think Brian Kavanaugh was joining us. May not be here yet. So we will start with Deborah Glick. Deborah, go ahead and unmute yourself. That would be a member, Deborah Glick. And nobody's here.
Thanks very much. I very much appreciate the opportunity to along I really cannot wait until we are actually all together in a room. And we cannot just see each other, but give each other a hug. This is a long process. Obviously, the big thing this week is voting. There are normally something like 5,200 voting locations across the state. I think we have at this point only a little under 300, which accounts for the long lines. Obviously, this is in a presidential year, that's when we have the most turnout. And so it is quite, it's relatively new to New York to have early voting. So we've seen lines like this for a presidential on election day. Hopefully, by election day, it will be, when we have more sites, it'll be a little bit more under control. So I pledge to you all that we in Albany will be looking at what we can do going forward to make it easier. We've made registrations easier. The fact that we have early voting is one of the ways in which we try to make it easier for people to vote. Obviously, the enthusiasm this year sort of overwhelmed our capacity. And it's also in the middle of a pandemic, so you have people socially distancing on the line. So the 3 or 4 blocks is also about people standing a few feet away from each other. But nonetheless, we really do need to give people a better opportunity to vote. We're beginning to talk about what the state can do regarding news in the event that we do not have any relief from Washington. But I will tell you now that without relief from Washington, it will be dire. Even if we can raise resources the next couple of years, sales tax are down, income tax is down, and our expenditures on healthcare are way up, and on providing testing and PPE and sanitation, disinfection, and the MTA is in a crisis. So we desperately need money from Washington. The state will not be able to fill all the holes. Obviously, I chair higher ed, and what the situation for colleges and the support, especially for smaller independent colleges. They are a vital part of our higher ed infrastructure, and they are on the ropes. So I didn't sound like an optimist, but in my heart I am. So I think that we will get some relief. It should have come 2 months ago, but hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, it will be here. And we will have to rebuild a lot. I will just close by saying, I think that the issue of open dining is concerning in the way it went through with a permanent allocation or permission. I think that it would be fine to do it for a year and then look to see what the ramifications are around noise on certain streets, sanitation, and in lower Manhattan, our streets, some of them are quite small. I drove up Mulberry the other day to deliver some hand sanitizer, and the car just fits between the outside dining. I don't know about a I know around the corner from me, the only place to put the snow is in the crosswalk. So I think we need to think that through. And while it's important to save our restaurants to the extent that we can, perhaps automatic permanency is the giving up of public space without a ULURP, without an EIS, without a large discussion is a problem. So I'm looking forward to tackling all of these issues with you. And I don't know if we will be together before Thanksgiving, but if we aren't, I hope that although this is a weird year, that you have a good Thanksgiving, and I wish everybody and their families to stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Deborah. We appreciate you coming. We have spoken also about trying to find a way to rebalance and redesign our streets so we can get everybody's needs taken care of. Next, I believe, Lizzie, tell me if Brian is here yet. Senator Kavanaugh here.
I do not see Senator Kavanaugh, but I can unmute Lizzie, and she can let us know. Lizzie, you're unmuted.
Hi, Tammy. Senator Kavanaugh is taking a bit longer. I'm sorry about that. I'll try to get him on as soon as possible.
When just send us a text so we know we're going to continue on. I have Sarah Yan from Assemblymember Yulee News Office. Sarah, we're going to unmute you. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Dara from Assemblymember News Office. I just wanted to give a quick update of what our office has been up to. So this month, the Assemblymember, alongside State Senator Salazar, introduced her fines, fee, and surcharges bill. This bill details a large extent of fines and fees and surcharges from our criminal legal system. To read more about the bill, I will drop the link in the chat box. And to speak about the FIDI homeless shelter statement, the Assembly member has released a statement regarding the announcement of the planned homeless shelter at the former Wall Street Radisson Hotel. She spoke on the need for community engagement and open lines of communication, which were missing throughout this process. And we'll continue to push for clarity and full transparency from our city agencies as well as other related parties. And for an update about the 70 Mulberry community meetings, this month the community meetings regarding the future of the site have begun. And it has been the Assembly members' priority to encourage community engagement as well as amplify the voices and the needs of our community. The Assembly member as well as our staff have attended each of these meetings and will continue to promote a process of focusing on the voice of the community. And throughout the pandemic, Yulee has prioritized organizing and participating in food distributions to ensure everyone has access. Moving forward, we'll continue to provide these meals for everyone who needs it. And if you need help accessing food, please contact our office. But with all that, I will end it here for tonight, and I will drop some information in the chat box.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate that. We're going to move right on to Cora from Councilmember Chin's office. Cora? Cora, your mic is open.
Oh, hi. Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. Oh, you can unmute me. That's right. Thank you. So I don't have to look for the button. Hello, everyone. From Councilmember Chin's office, a few highlights for you. And the most important one is to continue to assist the tenants at 225 Rector Place to help them to stay until the pandemic is over or as long as they can. And they are also participating in tonight's meeting as well. Thank you, BPC committee meeting. Put the efforts in there to discuss the situation and to help the affordable housing 421A issues in the overarching situation. Thank you all. For the seniors, Senior Center have navigated numerous obstacles during the pandemic to continue to provide resources to the older New Yorkers. So Councilmember Chin urged DFTR, the Department for the Aging, to provide some transparent steps on Senior Center reopening and also the path forward. Because senior centers have been doing a great job and many seniors in CB1, they count on the senior centers to have social interactions, social activities, but the senior centers are not offered enough opportunity to give their input to look after the seniors that they have been taking care of. This Friday, Councilmember Chin will be chairing an oversight hearing on the future of senior home delivered meals. Many seniors at IPN and the area also use the home delivered meals, but there have been a lot of problems with that. So if you are interested in testifying, I will include a link in the sign up for you to sign up in the chat box. And last week, Councilmember Chin and her colleagues passed Intro 2030 that keeps the threshold 5 for SCREE and DREE programs $50,000. And this will allow a greater number of seniors and disabled to qualify for rent increase exemptions. In addition, the outdoor dining was passed by the City Council 46-2, and this bill makes outdoor dining permanent and also officially allows for the use of electric and propane heaters. I'm going to wrap up on composting that our community needs very much. After fighting to restore funding throughout the city, Councilmember Chin partnered with the Earth Matter New York to celebrate their newest community composting drop-off at the Bowling Green Market. If you haven't been there, please do participate. That's it for now. Thank you, Tammy, and thank you all.
Thank you, Cora, so much for joining us, and thank you for that update. We want to move next. We have quite a few members of the public, so we're going to move on to the members of the public. We're going to start with Ann Stetson. So if you can unmute Ann Stetson, who is in the public area. Ann, you're open. Go ahead, Ann, you're unmuted. Ann? Hello, Ann.
I know Justine is going to be introducing a resolution supporting
Ann?
our tenancy.
Okay, good.
And until the COVID risk is over. And Cora from Councilmember Chin's office just made a reference to it as well. So I hope that you will support the resolution, and I want to thank you for the time that you've given us in previous meetings and having an opportunity to speak before the board. I'm speaking on behalf of quite a few of the tenants who are here this evening. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for those who missed that in the beginning, she is a resident of 225 Rector and about affordable housing. Next, we're going to move to Connie Fitzgerald from Invisible Hands. Let's see. Connie, you're open. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity. I am just simply here to introduce Invisible Hands. We're an organization that will, free of charge, go and run and do deliveries of grocery shopping and other essential items on behalf of your constituents. We'll do that for those folks who can pay for their groceries. And also we have done deliveries via mutual aid organizations. We will do it, we'll visit a food pantry and make the delivery, and we also do bulk food deliveries. Another thing that we're doing, given that we're heading into an election, we're also delivering absentee ballots, signed, sealed absentee ballots. We will take them to the Board of Elections or drop them off at the appropriate polling area. So we just wanted to introduce ourselves and our services. We can be reached at invisiblehandsdeliver.org, or you can call us 732-639-1579. That's all.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for coming, and thank you for joining us. We're going to go to Luke Wolf from Controller Scott Stringer's office next. Luke, sorry about that.
Not a problem at all. Hi, everyone. I'm Luke Wolf from City Controller Scott Stringer's office. I want to spend 2 minutes today talking about the economy. It is increasingly clear that we are not experiencing the V-shaped economic recovery many of us had hoped for. At 13.9% of September, the city's unemployment rate was 6 points above the national average, and New York City still lags behind the nation in job recovery, with only more than 1/3 of jobs lost at the height of the pandemic regained since. Which is why this week, Comptroller Stringer announced a comprehensive overhaul of workforce development in New York City to upskill millions of New Yorkers, dramatically diversify high-wage industries, and generate career opportunities to spur New York's recovery. The plan has 12 recommendations, which I will drop in the chat, but to highlight a few, the first is making community college free, like it was for generations of New Yorkers again through the CUNY schools. Number 2, create a CUNY Tech Corps to actually help small businesses adopt digital tools and develop an online presence. And number 3, expand career and technical education in public schools, which has actually decreased since 2013. So in this vein, we recently announced a cohort of 20 recent CUNY graduates who will participate in a 6-month fellowship with the Comptroller's Office to get work experience, which will hopefully help them in their job prospects. I want to use the rest of my time to be brief and touch upon a few things that were on the agenda in front of the community board this month. One, our office remains actively involved talking to the tenants from 225 Rector and working with them to reach a solution to keep them in their homes. Our office also continues to monitor coastal resiliency downtown and pushes the city to expedite that process to make sure downtown neighborhoods are protected. And lastly, I want to thank the community board for all their work this month on bringing the community together for a really productive and constructive conversation about homelessness in the area. So I want to thank everyone who was involved in making that possible.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to move on. We've got a large group of people here on the topic of the South Street Seaport and a variety of things. I'm going to save them for one large block and try and get everyone else who's going on different topics first. That's just a heads up. So next I'm going to go to Justine Kucha. She is a full board member signed up to speak as a member of the public. Justine?
Thanks, Tammy. Madam Chair, I should say. So my name is Justine Kucha, and I'm a member of the Community Board 1, but I'm speaking tonight in my private capacity as a resident of Lower Manhattan. During protests over the summer, our community, Lower Manhattan, was the scene of several egregious instances of excessive force by the police. All of this violence was directed at protesters who were speaking out against systemic racism within law enforcement and the criminal justice system. But the police reacted very differently last week when a pro-Trump demonstration took place in Lower Manhattan. In that instance, police seemed very sympathetic to the demonstrators and hostile to local residents who jeered at the march. But my real concern is that this discrepancy was made possible, in my opinion, because a few months ago, the Police Benevolent Association Union chose to endorse a candidate, Donald Trump's campaign for re-election. I find this offensive and disturbing on so many levels. The men and women of law enforcement are supposed to represent and protect all of us. How can we believe this when they embrace a divisive figure who espouses hatred and racism? Such a move sabotages the confidence we need and deserve to have in our police. Now, would I be similarly troubled if the police union endorsed a candidate that I supported? I don't know. But I suggest, or I postulate that I should be, because the police, much like the military, are supposed to protect all New Yorkers, not one side or the other. And personally, I would feel much better all the way around if police unions going forward were barred from endorsing any candidate, whether I happen to be in support or oppose that person, in the same way that military service personnel are prohibited from partisan activities. What they do in their private lives is up to them, but their public life should be nonpartisan. So I'm calling upon our elected officials to consider legislation that would, I know I'm done, but I want to say, let me finish the sentence. Consider legislation that would change the legal status of police unions to something similar to a 501c3 organization, which are, according to federal law, absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on the behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elected public office. Legal scholars would agree that this prohibition does not conflict with, should agree that it does not conflict with freedom of speech, and it would be a small change, but I think it would be significant to restoring the public's confidence in our police force. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Justine. We're going to move on to the next. I just want to do a double check because I don't see Senator Kavanaugh here yet. So I'm going to move into double check one more time. Okay, we're going to move forward to the public speakers because this is a large topic and I have half a dozen people who have signed up to speak. We're going to like you to try and keep it to 1 to 2 minutes so we can be targeted and on time. So we're going to start with Linda and Jay Hellstrom. We're going to unmute you from the public session.
I don't see a Melinda.
Linda and Jay Hellstrom. They're there. They're below.
Okay, we're
There we go.
unmuted now.
Randy, welcome to Community Board 1.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are speaking, the two of us are speaking in support of the creation of the new receiving sites for the seaport development rights. We live at 273 Water Street. It happens to be the home, this is our home, but it happens to be the building that is Captain Rose's original home, and it is the third oldest building, residential building in New York City. So we are a part of the historic seaport in a very deep way.
I come from Atlanta, Georgia, which is also a historic city, and I know the difficulty, and I very much support this, of preserving, and the battle is on to preserve the historic nature. This is a crown jewel of the city, and I call upon our elected officials and all those in support of preserving one of the unique aspects to allow us to transfer.
Only 1 minute.
Oh, she gets more time than I do usually also. So I will cede my time back to Linda.
Well, we just do not want the development rights to go into the historic seaport, because they should be transferred out of the seaport. Once we set a precedent of development rights into the seaport district, it's Katie bar the door.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Just so everybody is aware, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more people to speak on this topic. So I will be getting to you at 1 to 2 minutes each. However, before we do that, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer is with us this evening. So Gail Brewer, welcome. And Lucian, can you unmic?
Okay, Tammy, thank you. I'm going to be very quick because I know I'd much rather listen, but I do appreciate it because I have 5 community boards tonight. I just 3 quick things. One, whatever happens in terms of project renewal and the Lucerne and the Radisson and Community Board 1, I want you to know that all across the borough, you have been the model as to how to handle these issues. So your leadership and your board, just so I want to say congratulations. It's we will see what happens on November 16th, and I know there's discussions in between, but congratulations. Let's hope it goes well on November 16th and the Lucerne remains with those residents. We're working on Governor's Island. I know I heard discussion about South Street Seaport. I'm very aware of all these issues, and we'll be working with the community board, the council member, and the city. It's very, very challenging, but we will all be working together. I want to mention just some exciting concepts. Community Board 1 knows better than anybody every single street and sidewalk with outdoor dining, bicycles, drop-offs, stores. I understand that retail is going to be allowed to go out on the street soon. I don't know that that's public, but I've heard something to that effect. We need a public realm czar, somebody who can focus on the 20-some agencies that look at streetscapes for us, from the scaffolding to the state liquor authority. So I think you will agree with that. I know that Community Board 5 has been looking at this issue. We would love to have all of your input. COVID is ongoing. I did testify yesterday at the city council because the wastewater treatment plants can now do testing of waste. And in Boston, big article in the papers today, 6 days in advance of a spike. Boston found it before it became a problem because of their analysis of our waste. So we're working, I've been pushing really hard with the Department of Environmental Protection. Deputy Commissioner Pamela Largo has been fantastic. So they have a team of 3, they have a lab. They're doing 35 to 40 a day, but they want to do a lot more and they're waiting for some equipment to be able to do that. So just something to think about. I think many members of Community Board 1 know as well as I do about some of the remote learning and blended learning issues. We've mostly been focused on trying to make sure that not only do young people have devices, which may or may not be as big a problem in 2 as it is elsewhere, but when you have a device, you often don't have the connection and the bandwidth to go with it. So it's a package that's not there in all cases, and it has to be there in every single case. Affordable housing on all levels is an issue, so we have a task force. We are trying really hard to talk to every single person to see what kind of affordable housing opportunities are out there, particularly in this downturn. Are there buildings that could be purchased to be the kind of affordable housing that has the planning that Community Board 1 is known for? I just want to finally just state that, that the Community Board applications, believe it or not, are going to be released next month. We've given out grants for cultural tourism, just a regular expense. And of course, I think you know that we gave out money for census. We did the best we could on all levels. And of course, we give out capital every single year. Tomorrow, 1028 downtown, 1028 uptown, 1029 downtown. The New York City NYPD Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Listening Tour. You can certainly get all the information on our website and certainly I'm sure NYPD, but please participate. 1029 is Southern Manhattan residents. We will put the information on the chat, but we want a lot of people. I think around 150 participated in Queens. We want a lot more in Manhattan. And finally, on November 23rd, with HPD, we're doing a tenant resource. And thank you very much for everything the Board 1 is doing.
Well, thank you, Madam Borough President, for joining us. It is a very, very busy board for the next 12 months minimum.
Yes.
And we appreciate your support. So
Yep,
thank you for coming.
Okay.
Okay, I am going to move to Adrienne Sosin. I apologize if I've not said that right. She is in the attendee section. Adrienne? Yes, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm to the Community Board 1 membership in public, and thank you, Chairwoman Nelson. I am in support of the resolution for the creation of new receiving sites for the Seaport development rights that's about to be presented. What I want to bring up to the Community Board is a different use for the 250 Water Street property that will bring a larger benefit to the Seaport community in the city. A recent CB1 Environment Committee featured Laura Dodge, who reported that Langen and HHC completed their investigation phase of the toxic site and are now composing their report. She explained the next steps in the process and their preliminary results. Then the EDC at that same meeting reported on East River resiliency and their experiences with the Tiger Dam. And they reported to CB1 that they could identify no good land-based options for controlling flooding in the Seaport area. It may not be possible, but it is my thought to propose that the best use in terms of benefit to the community is that the 250 Water Street property on the upland border of the area, which flooded during Hurricane Sandy, is large enough and well situated enough to serve as an on-land resiliency infrastructure. Most other blocks upland are now fully built, so the opportunity to originate this type of flood control structure is unique. In these days of COVID, is it time for the city to consider eminent domain or some other purchase in service of providing the whole neighborhood with stormwater control through above and below ground flood mitigation infrastructure, while a green space roof structure could provide open space amenities to the community? Such an example of funding and land use for flood mitigation for public benefit is in Hoboken, New Jersey. Realizing this is a long shot, is there community board interest in public sources of support for a resiliency park at 250 Water Street? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for joining us at Community Board 1, and thank you for the interesting ideas. We are going to move on to David Sheldon, and we will unmute you, David, when you're unmuted. Let me double check where you are.
Are we here?
There you go. Welcome,
Okay.
David.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Briefly, historically, the South Street Seaport Historic District was financially designed commercially to support the South Street Seaport Museum. Subsequently, the New Marketplace lease denies that revenue to the museum. Instead, that money is going to a private developer. Originally, air rights in the South Street Seaport Historic District were to be sold outside of the district in order to support projects within the district. Now those rights are being sold once again to the benefit of a private developer. I speak in support of the resolution, perhaps a small revolution indeed, to make those air rights transferable to projects outside of the Seaport Historic District in order to preserve the height restrictions in the district and to secure those revenues to support needs within the district as originally intended. This area should not be entrusted to the middleman of this or any developer. Why are we putting them in control of the money that we need spent there by the sale of our public assets? I speak in support of the resolution to make those air rights transferable outside of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. And I will say that that is the mechanism that currently exists. So I'll leave that comment as it is. All right, Pat Gray signed up to speak.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Pat.
Hi, thank you. So yeah, my name is Pat Gray. I've been living in Battery Park City for 18 years, and I'm a member of the board of the Gateway Plaza Tenants Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My topic is a proposal to create a subcommittee within the Quality of Life Committee. I spoke to this topic at the board's July 28th meeting and raised it again today in the hope that a decision on creating the subcommittee might be made by say the start of the January meeting. I'll just give you a little bit, I'll sort of repeat some of the things that I said July 28th in the event that some of the people here may not have been present at the time. There is a group of us who have formed shortly after Mr. Floyd was killed. We call ourselves, just to have some kind of a name, Battery Park City for Black Lives Matter. We believe that now is the time to sincerely grapple with the racism that tragically, vividly, and boldly captured the nation's attention, beginning with the killing of Mr. Floyd on May 25th. We ask this community board today to respond to the truth of the accusation that longstanding racism continues to be insidiously inherent in all facets of everyday life. How might the community board, one, best respond? A key definition of the community board is that it plays an important role in improving the quality of life for all New Yorkers, and so CB1 has a standing quality of life committee. We believe that now would be the time to expand that committee to include an intersectional racial and social justice subcommittee. And just on the side, looking up the definition, there are many definitions of intersectional, and one of them concludes with, through an awareness of intersectionality, we can better acknowledge and ground the differences among us. I think the word intersectional kind of covers a wide swath of people, types of people, groups. And so what we're proposing then, if this subcommittee, yes?
You're at 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes, so please try and wind it up. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I'll skip a lot of the other stuff that I said during the other meeting, but we're proposing this subcommittee to actively seek collaboration with various constituents and city agencies in order to promulgate just proposals and resolutions. And we're proposing that equal time be given to participating community members. I won't take up any more time, but we're hopeful that this will be considered. We think it's the time for something like this to be birthed, so to speak. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pat Gray, and thank you for coming to the Quality of Life meeting very consistently. I would like to recognize Christopher Marte. He is next. I think if he can be unmuted. Chris?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Community Board 1. I strongly support the creation of the new receiving site for the Seaport development rights. This is a unique opportunity to meet the demands of parents to keep their neighborhood safe for their children and preservationists to help the Seaport remain a true historic district, while still allowing the developer to sell their air rights to financially support the South Street Seaport Museum. This resolution provides a clear answer to what has become a decisive issue that has put community interest against other community interests. I hope members of Community Board 1 vote yes on this resolution. This could really be a win-win-win solution. So thank you for writing this resolution, and hopefully we'll get it passed today.
Wow, that was fast and under time. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to go to Megan Malvern.
You got me?
I got you, Megan. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you to CB1 and to Madam Chairman. I really appreciate the time and the attention that this has received. I'm speaking as myself, but also as co-founder of Children First, a group that we put together to first deal with some of the 250 Water Street problems that were arising. And we're also part of a member of the Greater Seaport Coalition. I'm talking today to speak in support of the resolution to expand the available receiving sites for Seaport air rights. Approving the creation of new receiving sites would give the Seaport Historic District a viable way to remove the oversized and dangerous development bullseye that is threatening the district. The current air right environment created by the EDC sets the table for HHC's profiteering on the deeply historic 10-block area. Without greater alternatives for receiving sites, there are limited options for anyone owning property in the district. This situation will force the district to cannibalize itself into extinction. Children First is in complete support of this truly visionary solution being put forward by the Land Use, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee. This action will allow the air rights to be bid on by a larger market and will result in a robust revenue stream that can support the South Street Seaport Museum and at the same time generate significant and deeply affordable housing in the larger neighborhood by allowing more apartments to be built in areas where the zoning is aligned. I just want to thank you for your time and consideration and hope that this receives the full support of the full board.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thank you for coming. I'm going to move next to Emily Hellstrom. Emily, I see you signed in twice, but I assume you're only speaking once. And if we can unmute Emily.
Hello.
Emily, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank community board members in general, because I know how tireless and thankless a job it is, and it's really hard work. And I think that really what I want to say is that we have to really listen to community boards and the things that come out of community boards. Communities know best how to take care of their own communities. We are in unprecedented times. We need economic development, but the people who know best how to make economic development so very often is the wisdom that comes from places like the people who are sitting on this board. In 2013, they very wisely said, we have something amazing here. It is the birthplace of not only our city, but arguably our nation. And we need to preserve it, because by preserving it, we can actually make a neighborhood and a jewel of the city that people want to come to. It creates vibrancy, jobs, but it is really more than that. It is living history. So I think that it is something that we really must focus on, and not think that there is only one option, and that is the option that is the most expedient and seems the most glossy and shiny. Sometimes the low-hanging fruit is rotten. So I support this resolution, and I thank you to people like Tammy, who chairs this board and who's really giving voice to people who come, but also to Paul Goldstein, who's been in this community for years and years and has watched this and done things like create schools, create jobs, create housing. And, you know, I think we really need to listen to the people who are here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. I thank you for the compliment, and I will say that while I may lead, it is really, I may have a title, but it is about the people on this board who do an incredible amount of work. Every single one of the 50 members of Community Board 1 being engaged and spending the time to volunteer. So it's not me as much as it is them, and trust me, they have no trouble telling me how they feel. On that note, we'll go to Stacy Shub, and if we can unmute Stacy, she's next.
Great.
Stacey,
Thanks, Tammy.
there you go. Hi, Stacy.
Hi. So I won't harp on this too much. It's already been mentioned, but I do want to echo that we all want to save the South Street Seaport Museum while building affordable housing. Please seriously consider the very well vetted alternative we have of allowing for the sale of the city-owned air rights outside of the historic district. By monetizing those air rights, it's a win-win. We can have even more affordable housing while saving the museum and keeping the low-scale nature of the district. I also wanted to mention, since somebody mentioned resiliency, it's another benefit, obviously, is keeping to the low scale, is the resiliency issue. There's also information in the chat. I will put in a plug. New Downtown Dems are having a talk on coastal resiliency on Thursday. And the last thing I want to mention, because I'd never hear it mentioned, is the hidden history of slavery at the seaport. I don't know why this is not mentioned. It's embarrassing to me that my daughter attends school downtown and I've never heard anything mentioned. The museums that have had exhibits, such as the New York Historical Society, have seen an 80% increase in their visitation, as well as millions of dollars to pour in. So there are other ways for us to do the right thing by telling the story, as well as provide much needed funding to the museum as well. Thank you.
Stacy, great points all. I think we are all wondering the same kind of question on that. So thank you very much. I want to check in back with Lizzie Lee from Senator Kavanaugh's office.
Thank you so much, Tammy. And thank you for everyone for coming together, even with our constantly evolving circumstances. As Assemblymember Blake had mentioned, early voting is a iterative process that we hope to, make sure that we are getting right the next time. If you do feel comfortable voting in person, we really do urge that you vote early and vote in person this week. If you're voting via absentee ballot, I'm sure everyone knows by now to make sure to read the instructions very, very carefully. Today was the last day to request a ballot in New York, so we're all looking forward to that. Please feel free to contact our office if you have any questions or concerns in making sure that your vote gets counted. In regards to small businesses, we are very concerned about some of the stated issues with outdoor dining, but with that said, we're going to be a continued partner for our small business community to make sure that we're doing everything that they can to stay afloat. We have several endeavors in the legislative front, including the Small Business Recovery Lease Act. This program, if passed, would allow the state to enable the city to allow for business owners and building building owners impacted by COVID to renegotiate terms and provide tax abatements that will really incentivize longer term stability for the tenants. And with the eviction moratorium, again, it's less certain recent days. The executive orders have passed, and we are calling on further legislation to make sure that we're providing the tenant protections that people really do need. If you'd like to know more about this, I will also drop our website link in the chat below. There's a lot of various legislative endeavors to make sure that we are providing this statutorily as a tenant protection right. And if you feel like you're being evicted illegally, or people in your network are being regarded in a yes. Hello?
You're going to have to start wrapping it up.
Definitely, no problem. Please feel free to call 311 or utilize Housing Court Answers hotline, which I will also drop in the chat. We're continuing to closely engage with community issues and Governor's Island rezoning. I'm really glad that CB1 so characteristically took the initiative to collaborate with Brooklyn CBs, which Senator Kavanaugh has long been advocating for. And, we'll continue to work very closely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and please let Senator Kavanaugh know if he is able to make it. We know he's on a busy schedule. We would always welcome him, even if he comes during the business session. I'm happy to have him along.
Thank you,
All right. My pleasure.
And can you please remind speakers they have 1 to 2 minutes and the clock is on the screen?
Yep, and I actually think, Lucy, with that, we might be done. If I don't see any other hands up and I don't see any other sign-ons, because we had a couple duplicate sign-ons, let me take a quick look through Alex, you did not sign up on the attendance sheet. All right, Alex Dashelberg is the only hand I see left. Alex, we'll unmute you next time, please. You're going to use a backward sign in for me, please.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak. I appreciate it. I am a downtown resident, longtime downtown resident, and parent of a child on Governor's Island at the New York Harbor School. And I am here to tell you guys that you're about to hear again from Governor's Island Trust about their big, exciting plans for the island. And I just wanted to ask that you, as a community board, remember the New York Harbor School that has been there for 13 years trying to teach the kids how to do things on the water or anything related to marine life, but they have no swimming pool, they have no aquatics training center, and they have no gym, and they have no auditorium. This is a school that could use the space that is provided already, but we are not being given it by Governor's Island Trust. And they are proposing putting all sorts of new exciting things on the island, and our school is not being prioritized. So we would like to ask that the community board support us, please, in the effort to get the school some of the basics that it really needs, since it's a school that's based on the premise of teaching our kids hands-on skills, including professional diving. How does our kid get to learn professional diving without an aquatics training center? It's really challenging. So we'd love for the kids to learn how to swim and have that be a prerequisite, which it once was for this school before it moved to Governor's Island from Brooklyn. We don't have the equipment or the space or the building, and we need the support from the community board to get Governor's Island Trust to give us that kind of space and place, and it needs to be prioritized. And thank you so much for all that you do. It is impressive that you guys put this time and energy into this work, and thank you.
Alex, I'll have you know from me that you'll hear, if you stay on for the business session, an amendment to the budget to reflect the conversation that you just had with us, because it was brought up in committee by Amy Cota and other people from the PTA. So it is a budget ask that we have.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Welcome. we can always just ask. The next person, actually, we have a couple more signups, is Linda Roche. Linda, if you could sign up, if we can unmute you and find you. If we can, there you go. Welcome,
Oh,
Linda.
hi.
I should say welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I've been a resident of the historic Seaport area since 1978. And I say the historic Seaport because I'm not sure if you realize this, but Howard Hughes rebranded themselves to be the Seaport District. So they removed historic from the name of the area. In any event, I want to take the opportunity to impart my support of the receiving site resolution presented tonight. The South Street Seaport Historic District is really a precious landmarked area of historic proportions. My community is not against affordable housing, just build it within the 120-foot restriction and allow the sale of the receiving air rights outside the historic area to support the financial needs of the museum. If we allow the receiving sites to be transferred to 250 Water Street, think about the precedent we are setting for all of the landmarked and historic districts throughout New York City. So I'm hoping that everybody votes in favor of this resolution. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So I think with the use of all of our technology and everybody else, I do not see any other hands up for anybody who did not get called on for the public session. I'm checking. Colin, you're my backup. Have you looked? Lucian?
I think you're good.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, we're going to close the public session. I completely appreciate every single person who has come to the meeting and spoken up. You have been heard and recorded. So with that, we're going to move into the business session. Let's get the agenda up and going. And do I have a motion to adopt the September minutes?
Motion to adopt the minutes.
Fantastic. Second?
I second.
Awesome. So if I have no abstentions or recusals or nays, can I assume the minutes are adopted? Awesome. Moving on. Mariama, Treasurer's Report. And by the way, just want to announce that this is the closest, the fastest public session and public hearing I've had since I got here. So, you.
Right, despite all those very important issues. That was amazing.
Exactly. So thank you, everybody. Take it away. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mariama.
Madam Chair. So this should be pretty quick too. We, as of the fiscal year end, we had a balance of $161,209. Of that, very nominal amount has been spent. We had a training for the benefit of the board members that is listed here, and another $500 that is part of like an intercompany transfer to get it from one accountant to the other. Nothing to be concerned about. And the rest is salaries for either the office employee, well, all the office employees, but either the directly employed by the office employees or the contracted employees, salaried or contracted, right? And that's it. So now we have 157,709. Any questions?
Remember, questions during the business session are for board members only. The public, if you have a question, you can send it to the host and one of the office team will try and answer you. But for any board members, any questions?
Very good. That's the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariama. There's seeing no hands raised. We move on to the district manager's report. Lucian.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back. I missed you all last month. Most of my report is we had a baby, and so I have devoted most of my my time to diaper changing and feeding and bouncing said baby. However, we were able to do a couple other things. I was able to help Tammy in responding to the very out of nowhere proposed shelter move and the kind of injustice for the occupants of the Lucerne Hotel on the Upper West Side. And that was, I think, a very successful public forum. And so I just want to thank everybody. It was really an all hands on deck affair. and we had an immense assist from the Manhattan Borough President's office. And so for that, we are eternally grateful. Next week, I'll be meeting with the Department of Design and Construction, the Department of Transportation, to discuss my proposal to have them include Joseph P. Ward Street in their upcoming reconstruction project, as there are myriad issues with the drainage of the water, especially that is now part of a very important pedestrian overpass crossing route. We want to make sure that everything is kind of perfect all 4 seasons. So I'll be pushing to make sure that the water drainage is addressed as fast as possible. With that, I want to thank the leadership and especially the staff for carrying on my duties while I've been out. I really do appreciate it, and it is a lot of help and a lot of peace of mind that allowed us to really focus on the baby. So thanks to all of you.
Cool. Well, and if you were here early in the meeting, those who came early got to see baby. So, the early bird got the pick. So sorry for those who didn't come early. Next time. Alrighty, moving on from our district managers to the chairperson's report. This is going to be the fastest chairperson report ever, simply because I think you've seen enough of me this month. So let's move to the next slide. This is 8 years after Superstorm Sandy. There are a lot of milestones that we like to remember, positive ones. This, unfortunately, is not. So this is a combination of what we call leadership at work. This is the community board chairs have all come together to ask and discuss the progress of what was originally known as the Big U, a vision for the 10-mile stretch with the physical and social infrastructure. So this is a combination with Rebuild by Design, CB1, CB2, the city, CB4, CB6, and really it's for a nice general overview, because the most important thing is not only what happens in CB1, but if we can't connect to our neighbors and we can't do something holistically, we've actually doomed the city from the start. So this is a topic that I know is near and dear to many on our board, and we hope that you can join us tomorrow night. It's a nice collaboration. And then I do hear and saw in the chat that there are also hyper-local discussions happening as well. So with that, I'm going to ask everybody to stay in touch. Please look, this map is what has been given to us. This is Governor's Island. If you don't recognize it because of the 2 development zones that are there, understand that this is a dialogue and a conversation happening now in Community Board 1 because it's our jurisdiction, but it is an amazing public asset for everyone. All of New York. We did outreach to CB2 and 6 in Brooklyn to try and have them be able to opine, because they have not had a public presentation since September 2018 and have not heard the most updated information. We talk about it on Borough Board and talk about it with your neighbors. This is not just ours. It represents everything for the city and one of the last true large open spaces. So keep in mind, we have a lot of stuff happening in CB1. Please pay attention to this as well. Next. And I think with that, I'm going to end officially the chair report and move into our executive committee report. 52 Williams, we have a temporary shelter that is there. There was a resolution that we talked about because there's been a lot of comments that have come from the city that do not accurately reflect the work that we've done in Community Board 1, do not reflect any of the statements we've made, do not reflect anything that borders on the truth. There are lots of references to things that are happening from the city. So the resolution is generated and started from 52 William, and it basically says we would like public engagement and transparency. Let's see, does anybody have any questions on the resolution? We can put it up if we need to. With that, I see no hands. We're going to do roll call because it's the first resolution. And Brittany or Colin, which one of you is doing roll call?
Me, it's Brittany.
All right, you're on.
When I call your name, if you could say your name and then your vote, that would be great. Amoruso? Amoruso? Okay. Burton? Burton? Blank?
Alice Blank, yes.
Thank you. Brown Kennedy?
Brown Kennedy, yes.
Right. Vicky Cameron?
Vicky Cameron, yes.
You need to say your full name there. Cassell?
Yes.
Chang?
Yes.
Thank you. Chapman?
Wendy Chapman, yes.
Arkudian?
Percudian, yes.
Thank you. Chu? Chu? Cole?
Susan Cole, yes.
Kuchia?
Justine Cuccia, yes.
Thank you. Cunningham? Cunningham? Okay. Curtis?
Francis Curtis, yes.
Okay, thank you. Airman?
Bruce Sherman, yes. It's getting hungry already.
Flynn?
Flynn, yes.
Franker?
Oh, sorry. Franker, yes.
Friedman?
Friedman, yes.
Roman?
From, yes.
Galloway?
Galloway, yes.
Goldstein?
Goldstein, yes.
Gupta?
Gupta, yes.
Jesse? Jesse? Okay. James?
Yes.
Joyce? Joyce?
Kay, yes.
Canal?
Chanel votes yes.
Kettering?
Kettering, yes.
Capel?
Capel's on the line. We have to unmute him. Dialing by phone. Lucian.
I'll come back. Clementis?
Okay.
Yes.
Phone line is unmuted.
Joel.
Joel, are you on the phone? Okay.
Yes.
Leslie?
Marie, yes.
Lerner?
Yes.
Lewinson? Lewinson? Sounded like she said yes, welcome. Mahoney?
Mahoney, no.
McHugh?
McHugh, yes.
Meltzer?
Meltzer, yes.
Mahalski?
Mahalski, yes.
Myhawk? Myhawk? Monjovi? Monjovi?
Yes.
Moore?
Moore, yes.
Notaro?
Nicole, yes.
Schneck?
Heck, yes.
Star? Star?
Star, yes.
Young, yes. Tedesco? Tedesco? Townley?
Yes.
Wade, yes. Weinstock?
Weinstock, yes.
Shu? Chow Shu?
Yes.
Thanks. Zelter?
Zelter, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have Amoruso? Burton? Chu? Cunningham?
Cunningham, yes.
Thank
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I got
Oh,
it.
okay, great.
Thank you. Lewinson? Myhawk? Or Tedesco? Okay, great. Motion passes.
I'm sorry, Brittany, did you get Eric?
Broke up. Say again.
Eric.
Jesse?
Oh,
Yes.
Jesse. Is he a yes?
I don't see him here. So I think he's absent so far.
Okay.
Okay. So it's going to bring us to the conversation. So we were alerted by DHS yesterday that they will be moving people into 52 William Street. We don't know much of the details yet, but we are waiting to hear. It was more of a notification than anything else. We have no answers yet on how many people, when, what the capacity is. We don't have a contact for their operator. We just don't have any information that I can share other than to let you know that the mayor has decided he'd like to move people in. So that is what that is. There will be further discussion and everything that happens as soon as we get it, basically, which then puts us to the mayoral executive order. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, so.
I mean, I do,
Justy,
if I could. I was trying to find
yeah.
the hand up thing.
That's okay.
Is the mayor aware, or if he is, he probably doesn't care, but is he a problem for the most part? I can't speak for everybody, but for the most part, was not the Lucerne men. I mean, this moving additional people, typically these from Lucerne that we did not want here. The complaint or the problem has been, or the concern has been that it is period for anyone to move into at an inappropriate time during a pandemic. He has to know that some of his colleagues on the city council have called for a moratorium. So what is being said about that, if anything?
How straight of an answer would you like?
Give me what you got. Whatever, hit me with your best.
Too bad, so sad. I mean, the answer that we got was community boards don't weigh in on siting of shelters, and that the temporary shelter is being done for emergency needs, and this is where the emergency is.
I was going to add that the men that are being moved in there now, not from the Lucerne, supposedly are being moved in there for dedensifying due to COVID.
Right. And the dedensification is because they can't be added at the moment to the shelters that are full from the dedensification.
Okay, and that is something that's allowable even or under the recommendations even by the CDC, is if that's the specific reason, to my understanding. So I guess that's that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Colin?
Just a point of clarification. These are families, correct? They're not men?
No. No.
They're just men?
Just men.
Okay.
Just men.
And
they do, Colin, to your point, they are planning on siting an adult family shelter in Lower Manhattan, which will be men and women or people with adult children.
Yeah.
That's different. That's a permanent shelter. And yeah. Justine.
Sorry, can I finish that thought really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for anyone who's wondering why I'm consistently voting no on this, for me, it's just an issue of compassion and wanting to help people who desperately need help. I don't know how to vote since there isn't a resolution I can't vote for, so that's why I'm voting no, because I desperately want to help these people, and that's where I'm coming from.
So do we. We're trying to help them cite one. Okay, Justine.
So this is just more of the same, basically, this next move. That was my question when you said it. No notice, no nothing. And some color was given to it by Mariama's question, because this is within legal authority because it's an emergency densification.
That's what I have been advised, yes.
There you go. Well, there we go. All right.
And
just
listen,
for
quite
Colin's
frankly,
point-
I'm grateful that they actually called us and told us, because it does give us an opportunity. We do have an amazing bid in that area, and it's really good for us to be able to let the bid know. So once they find a location for the men to smoke, in an ideal situation, that there'll be, appropriate canisters and quality of life things that help everybody in the way, instead of
Yes.
some information is better than none.
So that makes sense. And to Colin's point is, yeah, helping these people, all of them, is what should be our goal. And I think that's what's made me comfortable with the community board's response, is that it seems as if there has been concern for the actual homeless. And part of what I liked was actually having some of the members of the homeless population at Lucerne appear and speak at our meeting. And I think that we should be doing more of that. And I applaud it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. This will be the end of it for me. I won't keep talking about it. But for me, where I was initially turned off was how people were classifying the people that were moving into this facility in a way to try and either move it or deflect it or delay it. It was offensive for me in a day where we're talking about social justice. Some of the people on previous calls I've been on, I don't remember who, were talking about the dangers and how these people are dangerous to the community and children around or schools around. I found that really offensive. I thought it was deeply offensive. My wife works with people with poverty.
You're exactly right, Colin.
Yeah.
Support that 100%.
Yeah.
But thank you for clarifying why you voted no.
One more thought. And we talked a whole bunch about protecting people at City Hall. We talked a lot about putting the word violent in the protests, but everyone rejected this out of hand as violent people who were a danger to the community. That's all I want to say. I'm done with it. I don't want to start with it, but that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, Colin and Justine, that's not how we on Community Board 1 have done any of this thus far. That is not who we are so far, and I hope that we remain who we are. We have been trying to advocate for the best location to provide the best possible care for the people coming in through the shelter system. Our objection to 52 William was more in terms of its, we have this amazing sidewalk study that talked about where you can social distance. The needs that they have and how it fits into the urban landscape was not appropriate for 52 William. We actually did offer other sites. So having those dialogues are important. It's not like we don't want to help people. For goodness sakes, we've supported having shelters here before. We have voted for a women's shelter, as Susan reminded us, and family shelters. So, yeah. Bruce.
I wanted to make my comment too, because just to say that they've moved other people in is implicit of the fact that we were in opposition to the men themselves at the Lucerne. And I didn't like the feel of that at all. And
Mariama, we have never said that as a community board.
I know we
That's
haven't.
not where we're
I'm
going.
saying the implication by just saying, oh yeah, we moved other people. So maybe you're satisfied. We didn't put the Lucerne men in. I resent that implication.
Agree.
Yeah.
Look, my hope is that we have people from who are on our streets who will be able to have shelter. That's really what that's about. All right, Bruce, last question, and then we have to call a question.
I heard that I heard you just say that we did in fact suggest and put forth viable alternative places within our community board. Is that correct?
We offered a suggested area of locations, and we're waiting to hear back from DHS on that. So if I hear back, I'll let you know.
So that's geographic, but do we have any idea whether there are actual facilities or structures within those areas that could possibly house these people?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so the mayoral executive order was simply about, we are past the precipice of where we are in this pandemic. New York has been, the mayor has been out there talking very often how our schools are now the model of how to operate in a pandemic, how we are past the height, how things are easing. So it is time to take a look at the executive orders and restore some checks and balances back to the way the city operates. And so that is what this one is. Can I call the question?
Yeah, I will call the question or second it, whatever I can do.
Perfect.
I'm sorry. Were we on the budget?
That's next.
No.
Oh,
That's next.
sorry.
All right, hold on. So with the mayoral executive order, now it's been seconded, so we're going to go the way we do other resolutions. Do I hear any no's?
Mahoney, no.
Fine. Any other no's?
James, no.
Any others?
I have to abstain because I do not have a copy of the resolution.
No problem, Bob.
I don't know where it was. Okay.
No problem. That's Townley, yes. Okay, so are there any other abstentions or recusals? Okay, motion passes. Now we are on to capital and budget expense for year 2022. I'm going to have Lucian unmute because there were a couple friendly amendments that have come in. Lucian, can you go over them?
Certainly, Tammy. Diana, would you put the friendly amendment sheet up?
Yeah, I got it. I'm pulling it up right now.
Thank you.
And Tammy, is this the time to talk about what was brought up in the public session or before the public session?
A, raise your hand, yes, and B, let Lucian go first.
Yeah, Diana, could you go to page 2? We'll start with page 2 since I think I know what Justine is going to ask about. Let's see, hold on. Wait, go back to page 1, I'm sorry. Did I get the... Oh, there it is. It is on page 1. Justine, if you looked at items 7 and 8, the agency's cut off because there's so many letters. That's DOH, MH. So that's a couple items that were just, I'm sorry, there's a baby in the background.
No, that's okay, but yeah, you're right. That is it. Thank you.
Yeah, they were discussed in the quality of life meeting. Pat mentioned to me that she was going to move for a friendly amendment, so I included it in this list because I wanted everyone to have a good visual idea of what items are being offered to be included after the executive committee meeting. So starting from the top, repair the Collect Park Pond fountain. The next is reopen Park Road to vehicular traffic. These are both expense items. The next item is also expense construction of bus stop in front of PS 276. I'm assuming that this is an expense item because the materials are not very expensive, and I don't suspect that there's a need to do any kind of number 4, install public bathroom at 1 Center Street Plaza. This was brought before the board. The board supported it. I've had this listed as capital. Reopen World Trade Center streets. I have this listed as capital. Traffic calming measures for Second Place and Battery Place.
Is it possible to scroll slowly through? There are 115 line items, and we've never done.
No. These are just the additions, Bruce.
I see. I'm sorry. Sorry.
These are just the friendly amendments that were not included in the 100 that we have already done.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. See, and so number 7, this is expense, and we're beginning with MH items. Expand DOH MH Race to Justice program to all city agencies. And number 8, which is a companion item, fund Race to Justice training for CBOs, community-based organizations within CD1. Whoever, could somebody go through a mute? Someone has a little sound leaking. Number 9, establish a ferry route to Rikers Island from the East River Ferry docks. This, just to expand on this a little bit, is this is an opportunity to actually address the issues of that was the borough jail plan was attempting to address in part, and that is giving quicker and more convenient access to Rikers Island for defense counsel, friends, family, and others for those who are incarcerated at Rikers Island on a short term or a long, depending on what happens with the borough jail plan. Next page, please.
Actually, it also fits in, Lucian, because if you remember, there was an announcement by the city this week that they're going to close MDC, move everybody up to Rikers for something. So it would even be more meaningful.
Yeah, and our infrastructure is already in place, and I believe that they would just need to put a floating dock to accept citywide ferry at Rikers. The next is a ferry route to Governor's Island, year-round citywide ferry route to Governor's Island from Lower Manhattan. 11, Harbor School pool. This is something that we heard someone in the public session mention. Construct a pool for the aquatics program. Open a second Harbor School building as well. Those are all listed as capital to the Economic Development Corporation. So ensure that's the right last two, but that's an educated guess.
So, Lucian, just sticking 2 cents in and then I'm going to shut up. I have something to add that's not there.
You have a friendly amendment. What is your friendly amendment?
My friendly amendment is talking about the trainings, whether it's from Race to Justice or whatever that place was called. I can't remember now because I don't see it on the board, but someplace. Making the trainings for community board members, not just CB1, but all community board members, even the trainings that were already put out there, ends up, even though I did complain because the first set of trainings were made available during the daytime working business hours. So then they did take upon themselves, the borough president did make some evening hours available. I couldn't make those either. I had work events set scheduled and they were just very much, there was not much notice and I could not make it. I took none of them.
So Justine, is the question that you would like them to be available monthly? I mean,
or make them available online and do it sort of more like what corporations do. I don't know if there's a cost associated with that, but like in a corporation, you have to do annual diversity trainings, whatever the hell you're going to be doing, you have to do them. And they tell you, you have 6 weeks to get this done. And then they make you answer a question and then you get a little certificate.
Stop.
Funding for that.
Stop. So your friendly amendment is you would like the city to provide training available, online services available for everyone.
For community board members and make it mandatory within a period of time and make it,
They can't make it.
They can't make it mandatory for community board members? All right. Well, we can ask. They won't. Because if you make it mandatory and say you have to show up here and now, I could see that being a problem.
Justine, just a point of just to clarify, for the budget, it's not as much as what they should do, but so we're asking them to fund something.
Got it. Okay.
So we can't say that it should be made
mandatory. Okay.
Required, but we can say, and this is the language I've added. So Diane, this is back on page 1.
So I like what was there for 7 and 8 as it was. This would be another item.
Oh, well, I think based on what you're asking, because you want this to be available for community board members, we are technically a city agency.
Oh,
so it
okay.
fits within the city agency item. And so I modified the sentence to read at the end, propagate the teachings of the program across all city agencies and make all trainings online and with an at your own pace option.
Okay, that would work. I don't see it here, but okay.
No, I added that to the database.
Got it.
See that reflected there.
Yes, and making it available, that would be helpful.
Okay, so Justine, with that added, let's move forward. Let's get let's Colin, if your hand is done, put it down. Justine, if your hand is done, put it down. Andrew is next. Mariama, if you've spoken and you're done, please put your hand down. Andrew, go ahead.
Tammy, apologies if this was mentioned and I missed it, but do we offer any prioritization?
In terms of budget requests and prioritizing top 10 needs, that is an older system. I don't believe it still exists, but Lucian?
I don't believe prioritization is the same as it used to be. Used to be there were big fights over prioritizing, and I don't really think that's much of a thing now.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. Alrighty, perfect. I think with that, we're going to call the question because this is a resolution and we will be done and move on with this. So we're going to go the same way we've done this before. If I hear any no's, any abstentions or recusals? Okay, capital expense budget for year 2022 has passed
Question,
unanimously.
Tammy. Mark Amoruso, I see Mark Amoruso has joined us. Was he here for the first two resolutions?
Mark? Unmute
He's
yourself,
here, I
Mark.
noticed.
I see him. Mark? I'm gonna unmute you, just, Mark.
Okay, carry on. Sorry, I'll.
That's where we go.
All
All right, so to close out the executive committee, because it's been a really busy month, we had a presentation twice with DOT about the Warren Street cargo bike corral suggested in relation to Whole Foods / Amazon. The resolution failed in executive committee. I did ask DOT to return next month to transportation. We're going to put an invitation out for them to return with Whole Foods, because part of the problem that we have is whether or not they took the whole block and whether or not questions needed to be answered specifically by Whole Foods or places like, why didn't they look at the front sidewalk that they have? Why didn't they look at maybe any of the space on West Street and all the other things versus Warren Street? We asked for them to come back and to understand better from DOT if there was a potential for a temporary versus permanent. So it could be a try it before you buy it kind of a thing. So with all of those questions in hand, while we might not make their scheduling season, we're asking them to come in November. All right. And I'm not going to show slides because it'll be the third time they've seen them this month. Four hands are still up. Pat, you go.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest issue is why are we supplying public space for a very successful company that makes a lot of money? If they need space for their bike deliveries, then they need to supply and pay for that space. That was my objection.
Gotcha. Well, that's one of the things that when they return for transportation, hopefully you can join and ask. Okay. Bruce, is your hand just still up?
This is yes, my hand is up. There are a lot of issues to discuss tonight. I just want to say that there was a publication sent to me by someone sympathetic to the publication whom I know that quoted Mariama and myself and posed our opposition as a NIMBY item, that for environmental purposes and biking purposes, we were not willing to sacrifice 6 parking spaces. And as Pat said, that wasn't it at all. What my opposition, Mariana's opposition, although I don't want to speak for her, she can speak for herself, is that we're tired of giving our taxpayer money to large, successful private institutions. Let them put in the bike corral and pay for it. So, Mariana, if I'm speaking out of turn, forgive me.
Okay. Mitch, you're next.
Yes, the other thing that I just, for people that weren't at the meeting, another opposition reason was that we found out from DOT that this was done as a direct deal between Whole Foods and DOT without any community, what's the word? Maybe help me out. Like when a licensee for a restaurant comes, they have to post notice of that there's going to be a meeting and something. And this was done without anything posting, it was basically done as a backdoor deal. So whether you're for or against it, the process was totally irregular. And that was another reason why we voted against it.
Well, as I said, they're coming back. Let's have some open minds on how to find a way to get more delivery vans off the street and more cargo resolution. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it goes into transportation, and let's have it go back there. Mariama, is your hand still up? And Mitch, please put your hand down if you will.
Yes, mine was still up too. So sort of what Bruce spoke to. He and I were named, but a number of people were quoted, and the title of this thing was that, like, basically a panel of NIMBY people, refused bike parking to save 5 spaces. And as you know, and anybody that attended the meeting, that is absolutely not why. And they used a piece of my quote, and again, like I said, named me. So really, they misquoted me, because I very specifically said the reason that I was uncomfortable taking spaces away from the members of the public that belong to the public, city parking, was because I didn't feel comfortable giving it to a corporation like Whole Foods, Amazon, and Jeff Bezos. I was very clear on that. So just to set the record straight, although Bruce has also mentioned it, and Pat has also alluded to it as well. That's all.
Okay. All right. So without anything else, let's move on to our committee reports. And keep in mind, it's 7:46. I know the budget was big. I know a lot of this is big, but let's rock and roll. Justine, it's up to you.
Okay, well, I'll be quick. I'm going to focus first on the resolution, please, for supporting the 80/20 tenants and landlord at 225 Rector Place in Battery Park City. I think this was passed around. We voted in the committee, 6 in favor, 1 abstained. The public member, 1 public member voted and was in favor. I can go through the history if people want to hear it. I need to see faces if they need to see. Should I go through it all, or are
Can
we
we put up the committee?
put up the resolution? Would you like that shown?
Well, it says executive committee. We're done with that. I'd just like to see the roster.
That makes sense. Go next.
Let's hang on a sec. We're gonna have them do. Can you move the agenda up? Yep, Diana's working on it. I can see her in.
Good point, Bruce.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank
So,
you.
So this is the
And can you
resolution.
put for Justine, if you have the resolution, can you put up the therefore be it resolved? Or the whole thing? Thank you.
It's coming. I think there's a little lag, but it's on its way.
So basically, as I think in the public session, we heard some of the tenants speak. We've heard Cora from Margaret Chin's office speak in sort of support of it. And I think also, was it Luke Wolf from Scott Stringer's office that spoke to in support of this resolution? Basically, what we're looking to do is have the parties come to an agreement that keeps the tenants in place till the end of COVID. That would be that's what our ask is for. Part of this is a reference to a letter that was written by the elected officials, sponsored by Margaret Chin. I think that's attached to our resolution, or resolution was going to. At the end of the day, what we want to do is have something that kind of a win-win for both of them, though it's a lose-lose for both of them, because the tenants were living there under 421A provisions. That expired in November 2019, after having been extended for an extra 10 years. Long story, it's in there. Because of a lease amendment that was made between this landlord, who was an individual person, and the tenants in May 2018, all their leases came due in April 2020. So it was all done, good faith, everything was done before anything happened, and then COVID hit. So the landlord, Van One Rector, is a group of, I think, 17 or 18 private individuals that have gotten together to buy a bunch of properties. So we're not talking about Left Rack organization as a big entity, but we're still talking about people who have some money. And we're also talking about now down from 60 units that were affordable housing down to 13 units in the building. And we'd like to keep them in place as much as possible for as long as possible within reason. And that's what this amendment is. That's what this resolution is asking for. Anybody have any questions?
I see a hand up from Mariama.
All right, Mariama, thank you for saying that. Mariama, your hand is up. Go ahead.
No, I'm
speak.
sorry. I'm going to take it down. I support your resolution.
Thank you. Anybody else have things to ask?
All right, let's call the question then.
I can't call it, can I?
You can second it.
I can second it.
All right, so we're going to go the same way we've been doing all night. If you, unless I hear from you, are there anyone who is a no? Any abstentions? Any recusals? Okay, motion passes.
Excellent.
I'm still waiting for Mark to respond.
Yeah, me too.
So just no vote for each resolution so far?
So far, we have no vote for Mark. I don't know where he I hope he's okay.
Yeah. And the other reports, they're really not much to talk about. The census family is over. And it's done, so we're done. And I think we actually got a report on that saying that New York ended up doing pretty well. So that was that. Brookfield Properties report, I believe the construction at 200 Liberty Street is finally finished. So the loud noises that people have been complaining about should be done. The new restaurant has not opened yet, but I was seeing people put the little finishing touches on it as I walked by this morning or this afternoon. And I really have nothing much else to add. We've got a new statue, Mother Cabrini statue opened up in Battery Park City. It's rather lovely. And that's it. Anybody have questions about Battery Park City or anything to add about or anything that's going on there? Any questions, any issues?
Having seen no hands, let's move to the next committee. So let's move the agenda up and ask Paul Goldstein. Paul?
Okay, I think I could also be quick. We don't have any resolutions. We did have a lively discussion on a number of topics. Let's go through the slides very quickly. First one was Titanic Memorial Lighthouse. This is a proposal by an organization, Friends of Titanic Lighthouse Restoration, that is spearheading an effort to restore that monument. As you could see on this photo, the lighthouse originally was atop this building at the Battery, and it was moved a number of years ago, I forget, about 25 years ago, over to the Seaport site. And it's fallen into disrepair. And I think there's a lot of support for improving it. I know the community board already passed a resolution with the landmarks committee supporting this in concept. So we did not do any further resolutions on it, but are there any other slides to show, Diana? Just keep going. So this gives you some idea about what they have in mind. They have to remove it. They have to bring it off site. They said it would probably take about a year to restore it and would have to be moved probably to Alabama to do it there. And there are a number of groups involved with this, and there seems to be a little bit of a dispute between this organization at this stage and the Seaport Museum, but we didn't really get to the bottom of it. So that's really all there is to say about that. Okay, next. Neighborhood open.
Paul, is the Seaport Museum on the agenda elsewhere at all? Do you know?
Well, you could say it is with the landmark resolution regarding the air rights.
Yeah, that's coming up tonight. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, we got a report from Nisreen Saryai, and she had been our community planning fellow. She has departed us, but she came back to offer her report, which she didn't have an opportunity to present because of COVID. So she did a good study to look at what's going on in Community Board 1, look at the demographics, look at the changes that are taking place in population. I know a lot of board members are somewhat familiar with this, but it's good information for those who are not as familiar as some of us. So keep going, Diane. So again, she tried to prioritize the needs of the district, repairing parks and building new parks. Keep going. This was our inventory where she identified 108 open spaces, including lots of parks, plazas, and esplanades, and 57 POPs. So if you count all that, we have what seems like a lot of open space, but I've learned over the years when I see mental impact statement saying that the Trinity Church graveyard is part of our open space inventory, that you can't always take these things totally seriously. Anyway, there's, with the increase in population, the amount of space for the community has technically gone down. Could we keep going? Okay, so here we go. Prioritize, maintain, and preserve access to our spaces, improve the quality, additional open spaces, investment, etc. So these are all excellent recommendations that we will try to act on. Keep going, Diana. She identified some specifics, Brooklyn Banks that we should try to get back, and that is one of our budget priorities, and we have a new member who's very interested in working on this. So I'm happy about that. And all right, I think you get the picture with this report. Why don't we move on to the next item? Okay. So let me just go quickly through the remaining items. City Hall Park, we got an update from Skip Bloomberg, who's the president of Friends of City Hall Park. He's worked for many, many years on that park in conjunction with the community board. So he gave us an update. Things are improving, but there's many parts of the park that had been closed for quite some time due to circumstances have been reopened. Not so much the Northeast Plaza, that's remaining closed and barricaded. So he and the organization would love to see that reopen, and so would we, the committee. So we're working on that. Where we did put in several of their items that they asked for in the budget requests. I don't know if you saw them, but you know, things like improving broken pavers and trying to get more staff for the park, etc. Okay, and we're also going to try to get the Partnership for Parks to work with different organizations. That's coming up at our next meeting. And we did have a couple of very quick updates on City Hall Park. Really, the biggest update is that Pier 26 is now open. It's beautiful. I was over there for the opening. So was Andrew. It's magnificent. It's a great space that has sunning lawn, sports playing areas, lots of seating, and they have magnificent areas to approach the water and really get a sense of the environment of the Hudson River. So I urge people to check it out. It just opened a couple of weeks ago. We were also informed that they are working with Citigroup to restore ferry service from Pier 25, I believe, and they also added hours so that they're starting a little earlier. Citigroup's hours have expanded because of COVID. They're trying to have people not in the building all at once. So they asked us if we could allow the ferry to start earlier. So far, the board reports no complaints have come in. So we're going to continue to monitor that situation. Andrew gave a very thorough report about the advisory council and what's going on there. It seems like they're going to get more meetings going. And what else? Compost sites have been restored, including on Pier 25. So I'll leave it at that so we could keep going.
Thank you, Paul. Totally appreciate that. That's gonna move us along, Diana, to the next slide where it's Jeff Myhawk, if he's here for Youth and Ed, or Trisha. I haven't seen either of them in there tonight. So, Jeff.
They won't be joining us this evening.
So I don't see Jeff. We can come back to Youth and Ed unless Wendy, you want to? Were you at Youth and Ed this month? Do you want to present for them?
I was at Youth and Ed, but I don't feel like I should speak for Trisha.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll move Youth and Ed to call back. We'll come back to them. Bruce, landmarks.
Hi, very short agenda. 60 Collister Street, we could even skip. It was just a polite revisit of a applicant who was very nice and just wanted to show us an amended design that we had discussed and wrote a resolution for in a previous meeting. Bogardus Plaza, this is it's one of those, we are so sympathetic as a community board over so many years to the Friends of Bogardus Triangle, which has now spent years doing a wonderful job converting this, which was a piece of roadway and concrete, into a beautiful, beautiful pedestrian space and small park. And over the years, we have worked carefully with the Friends of Bogardus Triangle, and they have worked carefully to create a contextual and seemly park at a very crucial place on the border of the Tribeca West Historic District. It's where Hudson Street and West Broadway meet at Chambers and Reed. We were presented out of the blue with the construction almost complete, and it's another DDC construction job that is years late, with the desire to put a very large kiosk in the park. This is brand new after years. We understand that the Friends of Bogardus Triangle, which is now being called Bogardus Plaza, need a stream of revenue to maintain the plaza. It's not really for capital, it's for maintenance, because as you know, most of our public spaces, except things like Brooklyn Bridge Park and Hudson River Park, which come under the umbrella of a trust, are losing their their money to maintain their spaces. However, this is what we got. And I don't know if we have other slides from the presentation. All I want to point out is that after years of contextuality and care, DOT and reluctantly Friends of Bogardus are proposing this generic giant kiosk, which will be rented out to a retail food establishment to match the bus stops and those ridiculous metal little benches with little metal round bike parking loops that in 10 years I've never seen a person sit on or use as a bike stand that line West Broadway. But this is to match all street furniture, generic street furniture, glass and metal in New York. And when they were making the presentation, DOT, they specifically showed us bus stops as the contextuality. So we agree that this is good and necessary, but we think they should go back to the drawing board. That's rather long-winded, I'm sorry, but that's it.
It's all right. So let's call the question. Do I hear a second? Because I don't see any hands up, and it was a fairly thorough thing.
Second.
Okay. Awesome.
Second.
Question, if we vote, what are we voting against? We want them to go back to the drawing board, right? That's what we're voting.
Yes.
Correct. We don't like bus stop kiosks. We want something that's contextual to the location.
Okay, so yes means we're saying that.
Correct. All right. Any other questions? Comments? All right. So since it's been called and seconded, we're going to assume again that everybody's a yay. Are there any no's? If you are voting no, abstention, or recusal, please state your last name and your vote. Going once, going twice. Fantastic. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Bruce. Anything else? Bruce, all good? I got a nod. Perfect.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I was on mute.
All right, we're moving on to environmental protection. This is going to seem like an odd presenter for this group, but our fearless vice chair was unable to make the meeting. Colin, take it away for the Environmental Protection Committee.
Yes, I was the guest host with the mostest, and I would like to say that I ran a very quick and efficient meeting, I'd like to think. Anyways, Alice, please jump in and save me at some point, but we had three pretty big and contentious issues. One, of course, was 250 Water Street, where Laura Dodge talked about, she's the community's independent environmental consultant on the 250 Water Street Brownfield cleanup program. She gave a status update on the remedial investigation. She's working with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the New York State Department of Health to continue collating all the data collected during the investigation. I'm definitely not reading from cheat notes. Our definitive elevated readings for certain substances like mercury, but Laura was hesitant to say anything conclusive about the findings until all the data is processed and published. And we're about a month and a half away from that. If you have any questions on that, feel free to ask Alice. The second one was from the city's Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Quarterly Update. I found this one a little particularly interesting for me, given I'm a protagonist on the expansion program, but they talked a little bit about that. They also talked a little bit about resiliency plans. It's an ongoing thing. It was just a quick update. As you can see on the plan here, this is a timeline. Oh, that's in the next point. Sorry. Sorry. And finally, how am I doing? Finally, on Battery Park City Authority resiliency update, you can see on the slides here from an example of the deployment from the last storm, Isaias, where they basically tracked the time from deployment to picking it back up. And Alice, help me out. I'm really failing here.
Perfect. Doing great. You're doing great, Colin. You're doing great.
Thank you. Wait till we talk small biz. But overall, it was just a night of updates on three really important issues to a lot of us on the environmental committee, particularly as it relates to storm surges and resiliency projects. Of course, again, my favorite personal project, the proposed expansion of the downtown shoreline. Any questions?
Colin, I just want to thank you. I'm sorry that Wendy and I were out of commission, and I do want to thank Tammy also for recognizing the community-wide discussion tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, 8 years after Sandy. It's the first time that all the community boards will be joined to discuss this really critical resiliency measures for Lower Manhattan. So thank you. Night.
I did my best.
Andrew has a hand up. So Andrew.
And apologies, this is a very broad question that probably requires a detailed answer, but I'm wondering if there's a short answer to, do we have any infrastructure that's been put in place since Sandy currently that makes us any more resilient? And if not, when do we think we'll have the first infrastructure in place to protect Lower Manhattan?
That's a good question. You know, the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency is very segmented and compartmentalized, as you're probably aware. So I would say that no, there is nothing in place yet. There are, of course, interim measures, as you're aware, along Battery Park City, for example, at the ball fields. And we saw them, of course, during Isaiah, but we have no permanent infrastructure that I'm aware of that's in place. We'll be getting more information on this, about this at the Climate Coalition meeting this Friday. No, and this is one of the reasons why we have to really push forward very strongly about seeing a lot of this go through. And yeah, that's the answer, the short answer, I hope.
Thanks, Alice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions about that? All right. With no questions from the board, I want to thank Colin for stepping in, Alice always for being on top of it. And join us, as you said, tomorrow for the overview. And then in the chat, there was another comment about a hyper-local view. So if you need that, we can copy that back. Just chat to those. All right, moving on to Dr. Betty Kay with Transportation and Street Activity.
Okay, thank you. This can be a little bit unusual because everything sort of went sideways this month. If you go to the next one, because they're in a different order than that. Yeah, sorry. This is the order I'm going to present them. If you go to the next one, I'll talk about Revel electric moped sharing. And for those of you who've probably seen them around the district, I'm going to go on. They were stopped by the city after 2 deaths and then came back later. But for those, just to see, you can see with little blue areas or where you can leave or pick up the Revel scooters. You can see on to the right what they look like. So it's not throughout the district evenly, although it is for some other areas. Next. There's a couple of points I want to make since I get a lot of questions about this. There were changes of operation that did occur after to allow them to reopen, where originally they just needed a driver's license, which again, when you rent, you photograph it, so they do have that ID about you, and you needed an account. After they came back on August 27th with 3,000 mopeds throughout all 5 boroughs. There's a training video that's done through the app. There is an in-app safety test, which was also mandated. The photographic evidence of taking a selfie of the user wearing the helmet. And there are new penalties, which are probably what will interest people more. So this is where I hear from people. They now have trackers on the scooters. They're also used the geotags that tell them geographically where these scooters are at any given moment. So in real time in their offices, they can picture where all the scooters are operating at any given moment in time. They also have pings if the scooters go to a place, mopeds, where they're not supposed to be. So they do know in real time. Go on to the next one. Next slide. Yeah, so they have a new suspension policy. So you know what happens if they do something they shouldn't be doing. There are permanent suspensions, and this lists 5 different reasons, such as sharing your account or riding with a passenger under 18, riding on a sidewalk, riding on a highway, or anything with over 40 miles per hour. This is actually a little ambiguous and something I'm trying to straighten out, which is why there isn't a resolution this month. Also failing to report an accident. Warnings or temporary suspensions for these other things are with the first offense, but then it rapidly increases up to a permanent suspension for those who repeat some of these errors. Things like riding without a helmet or running red lights or stop signs, things they can't tell with their geotags. The second 2 things that people complain about, they can tell in real time, riding in the bike lane or on a major bridge or in a tunnel or in a park. They can also going the wrong way down a one-way street, they can tell remotely. If you see some of these things, you go to the next one, there is a mechanism where you can complain about them. Because reckless driving, yes, includes lots of things. If you see any of these things, some of them will not be picked up with the geotags. And they do lead to a temporary suspension. And I want you to note too, Revel, even though they're aware, does not shut off or slow the engines, although they could electronically do that. But they are concerned about the potential harm to the user. Hence, they let them complete their ride, and then they put them into suspension. The person finds out they can't rent again. Various times. If you go to the next. Yeah, if you do want to report, by all means, if you want the Revel app to put on, there's no cost to it. You can report any transaction, any things that you see wrong out on the street. You can also go online or call it into Revel. If you give them the location and the time, they can identify who's on which scooter. So it is very effective. Any questions about Revel scooter? Because I am planning a resolution next month. Like I said, I'm still waiting for some information from the DOT to clarify what a highway is and what is West Street. Because that they don't have an answer.
You've got a couple hands up. I have a question, but I'll wait till the end. Let Bruce go first. Bruce? Bruce, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, he's on the phone.
He's on the phone. Okay, so I'm going to ask my question first, and then he can come back. One of the things that I have a curiosity about is the GPS system that they use for judging where it is. I am rather, I'd like to understand how definite it is, because I've seen Revel scooters on the bike path, on the Greenway, and it's almost nigh impossible to understand if they're on the Greenway or 9A, I would assume, you know, based on GPS only. That kind of delineation I've seen on the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. There's been a lot of dialogue about the dangerous conditions caused by motorized bikes, and specifically they have mentioned Revel. So my question is to understand how their GPS system detailed it is, how finite it is, and really understand how can they tell the difference between the Greenway and 9A. How do they know, you know, if they've traveled off into Pier 26, do they know that? Can they tell, for example, if someone's dismounted and walked it over there?
No, they can't tell the difference if it's being moved. However, well, speed they could. On the other hand, they don't really care if it doesn't belong there, it doesn't belong there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And
But I will
Bruce
ask
is...
as we move.
I have a quick question, if you don't, is
Sure.
that okay? Quick?
Yeah, please.
These are not motorcycles, these are motor scooters. They don't go fast.
They're
but-
mopeds.
Right, mopeds, but New York State and New York City require very strict motorcycle licenses for
Not for
motorcycles.
mopeds.
Right. Not for not for any mopeds?
Correct. They're considered limited use motorcycles or mopeds. The maximum speed is 30 miles per hour. And so they don't require a license, a motorcycle license or training, which is why the DOT had required, and they came back with their safety app training, was trying to get around some of those issues because there was concern about that.
Are you pleased with where things stand?
Am I pleased?
Yes.
I don't know if they care what I think, but
Well, what is the informed?
I'm sorry, but that was really odd.
What is the informed consensus of the committee regarding the current state of Revel?
it was actually very positive. But there were some concerns about things like West Street, which is why we're seeking clarification, and I'm still waiting for that. They can't go on
Thank you.
tunnels, so they can't go on major bridges, so those are excluded. They cannot go on the FDR because that's a very obvious limited access highway. Canal Street and West Street were the two bigger questions of do they belong there? And that's when the representatives from the DOT said, you know, we just don't know those details yet. And the Deputy Commissioner Santina is. And so she is looking into it and obviously has to go to the state level to get final decisions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Bruce. Andrew, you're next, followed by Andrew is, I thought Alice had her hand up, but it disappeared. So then Justine.
Betty, quick question. How do account holders know where the mopeds are permitted to go and are not? So for example, you know, if they were going down West Street and dismounted and got into the Greenway or took it into Pier 26, how would they know that it's not allowed there?
That's partly what the test is supposed to be. The test they have to take before they can activate.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Justine and then Vicky.
So I thought, Betty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that these things were able to go up to 40 miles per hour, which is why they were allegedly allowed on the West Side Highway. You think
No,
it's 30?
mopeds by definition, by New York State motor vehicle is 30 mile per hour maximum. Otherwise, they're not a moped, they're a motorcycle.
Oh, interesting. Okay, whatever. They did, I know that during our meeting, Mitch Froman I think it was Mitch looked up on Google and asked, to figure out if West Side Highway was a highway or not, and they have listed it as a highway. But you're right, the DOT.
That's what we had the
they put
deputy
back.
commissioner, and she did not agree with that, and in fact has
Well,
gone
she
to the
didn't
state
know,
level.
she said.
No, no,
Yeah, she said she
Well,
didn't,
exactly,
she didn't know. And so she
regulations
said
aren't
to get
written.
back to us.
The person who wrote Wikipedia knew more than it actually exists, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, she needs to, well, she will come back to us, which will be a very important factor.
Justine,
But also,
everything on the computer right now on Google says West Street is from the bottom of Manhattan up to 57th Street, and then technically it becomes the Henry Hudson Parkway. That's according to all the research, unless they've changed the rules.
well, yeah, so I don't, regardless, I think we all agree that the
guys,
shouldn't be on the West Side Highway. But I have a point.
Go to the meeting in November when we will have a possible resolution and this will be discussed. That's the discussion should not be happening here because it has to happen in committee. And then get to a resolution and come back to us. Everybody,
Right, so there will be, there will be a resolution. What's holding it up or may hold it up in November is getting the final word of the DOT on how to classify West Street. Otherwise, it's fine. Next one, next slide, so I can move on. That's the ride. We did hear about it. And again, another thing I had hoped next month to do a resolution on. And now I'm going to end with asking people, if anyone gets the Daily News, New York Daily News, and has an electronic copy, an article came out today, which kind of blew up, getting to this real quickly, saying that the MTA board is set to approve a far-reaching contract with rideshare companies, something like $500 million, and is to provide excessive ride services. So there's going to be a whole nother chapter to look at of what is the excessive ride program. Just as well, I didn't have the resolution done. It's going to be postponed longer. But if anyone can send me the article, that would be great. And next, again, the resolution is going to be dependent on when we finally hear anything. An Ann Street update was interesting, and a couple of points I want to make as people bring them up. Yes, DeClaudio's has a specific problem. They do not have a fixed space, so they have to take down and build up every day, which has created unusual problems, such as to have a structure for any kind of enclosure. Difficult to do that when you're moving everything every single day. Another issue, the lunch trade, very diminished, and I understand they've actually, DeClaudio's have just stopped doing lunch service. But for those who want to know, it is because there are few workers or tourists. The Downtown Alliance is working on addressing this problem for the restaurants in general. We're having the same problem. But I want you to know as well, the New York Times had an article today talking about elevators and how that will become the worst part of everybody's commute. And in fact, how high rises will probably limit who's allowed to go down at lunchtime. Again, probably changing how things are done for lunchtime trade for these restaurants. Also, DOT's regulations for permanent outdoor dining are still being developed. But you should also know, while I talk about it being permanent, the rules probably are not permanent and will probably change sometime next summer or after the summer. Why? The current use of streets by businesses is not sustainable for the DOT. So this is going to change. They just don't know how it's going to change. So this is all a moving target. It's an evolving issue.
Hey, sorry, Betty, quick question.
Yes.
Really quick. The plowing issue actually came up at the small business working group last night. So if Tammy's okay with it, I'd love to have my working group work with your committee on some sort of solution there.
Yes, and actually that's part of one of the problems with the use of the street space. There are so many demands coming up for the same street space that while they work on that, as well as the logistics about things such as plowing and sanitation.
Yep.
So one of the things I want to say is that we brought this up at Borough Board, Betty. We are not the only community board district struggling with this. And in fact, any district that has historic streets of any kind, hence the West Village, parts of the Lower East Side, things like that, having this regulation be permanent without a holistic look at things and understanding that not every street looks like 23rd and 14th and, you know, the grid.
It
is
isn't
something that-
anyway.
Yeah, the borough president said that she is working on something, but I don't know what it is, so I don't want to speak with her, but it did come up by almost every board on borough board.
Yeah, no, Ed Pinkar told Lucian and I that they're working on this. So it's a well-known problem and they're working on it.
Yeah.
So all I
mean-
know is it's going to be changed.
Yeah, I mean, for my purposes, for, you know, the community board of the people who hear all the problems, get all the complaint, we're the ones that do the licensing and everything else. So I find it really very frustrating that the community board in itself was not included in any way in the process or the process for fixing. Just saying it.
I had my
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, I'm done unless there are any questions
Yes,
to
I
answer.
had my hand up. Hello, Tammy.
Sorry, Vicky, I missed your hand. Go for it.
Right, and then Francis.
Betty, just a comment and a concern. I'm assuming that the Revel scooters are a private entity, right? That is produced, yeah. So, you know, this year, many years in the past, we have a lot of deaths on the bike accidents throughout the city and the boroughs. And now this year, for example, there's been a surge in bike deaths. I think a lot more people are riding it, but, you know, I was also speaking to some policemen around the corner when there was an incident, and I cannot tell you how concerning it is to have these scooters. People don't even know how to ride a bicycle, and we've had what, 800 deaths or something. And so now, you know, this private entity is introducing scooters. Cops are telling me that, you know, people are getting killed because they're talking on the phone, they're drinking coffee, they don't know roads rules, and so he said they're not wearing helmets, and it just seems like another crazy idea, you know, a bit like rollerblading everywhere until we all broke every bone. So I'm very concerned about the scooters, and especially when they're in bike lanes buzzing. You know, all you need is one to go around the corner and someone else in a bike pulls out, never thinking someone's going 30 miles an hour. I think it's a really dangerous proposition to just leave it sort of in the private hands. Anyway, it's just my thought.
Thank you. It's unfortunately cars are kind of the same way.
Well, but you can't get rid of everything in life. At least cars have their roads, but you know, if they're not going to let them go on the roads,
they are on the roads.
The bicyclists are already getting killed, so I'm just a little concerned. People are now getting a bigger vehicle and a more powerful vehicle. It just seems like the killing fields will begin.
No, are you talking about the scooters? They belong on the road with the cars.
But you know, they ride everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're on the road, I'm just saying people will be hurt because people don't know how to ride and follow traffic rules. Not everyone in New York City has a license to drive a car, so they just all over the place. I'm just saying a future hazard.
Okay, well, they have a driver's license, so.
I recommend Vicky, you come to the transportation meeting in November and ask
Fine.
questions.
I don't want to debate life with Betty. I'm just telling her I ride a bike and it's really dangerous. And here she is battling me. Just say, yes, I agree. It's a dangerous thing in New York City.
It is if they're in bike lanes, yes, and they don't belong there, definitely.
And then Cora from the council member's office reminds all of us that we shouldn't be using Google to take a look at what a New York State highway is, that New York State DOT has an official highway map, and that is actually what the law goes by. So we can certainly take a look at those in committee. Everybody else, I don't see any other hands up. Betty, you always get
Betty, I just wanted, I emailed you the article.
Oh, thank you, Francis.
And Tammy, the copy.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. I think that takes us out of transportation. Thank you so much. And moves us right into quality of life.
Quality of life. Right. So Officer Nelson came to speak to us about policing from the 1st Precinct, and we were able to ask him questions. One of my questions was, We've all heard that because of the changes with police and dealing with the homeless, I wanted to know what were their instructions. So they were told that they were no longer allowed to do anything about the homeless, but he said that wasn't really true, that they still will, if they get a 911 call, which they ask everyone to call 911 if you see a homeless person who is either dangerous to themselves or dangerous to anyone else, please call 911. They respond. They will do what they need to do once they respond and assess the situation. They are not allowed to remove anyone who is not dangerous, acting in a dangerous manner. They can ask to cajole them, and try to move them along, but they cannot forcibly remove someone who is not presenting a danger to the public. So that was interesting to hear. He answered a lot of other questions that the committee had, and he will come back again. Everyone should know that on October 29th, I think that's this Thursday at 6 p.m., is the First Precinct community meeting, which I think we're going to send out or post on our website for people to attend and ask questions. Then we had New York State housing legislation. We are going to move to November. It's a big issue. There are a lot of housing bills that have been proposed by both Assemblymember New and Senator Kavanaugh. We are going to review the housing bills, but of course we need federal aid. We need money from the federal government before anything can be done. We need to have both for renters and mortgage people who are having trouble with their mortgage due to the pandemic. So we're moving that to November. Let's see. Number 3, walking while trans, we're moving to November also. Number 4, racism as a public health. This was a great conversation that we had with Elle Tantai, who is from the Department of Health. They have developed a program that is called Race to Justice. It's an educational program. It's called Race to Justice. It's about racial justice, social justice, and gender justice in the healthcare system. They are getting all of their staff to take this training. They're offering it to some of the other city agencies, and that's why we ask that it be included in the budget. Money to be found so that all city agencies can participate in this and take this training. Let's see, what else have we got? The number 5, we're going to move to November, and then number 6 is Francis.
Yeah, and I am the representative to the New York Presbyterian Lower Manhattan CAB, and this was a very long meeting, and it was unfortunate that this item was number 6 because the chief of the emergency services, Dr. Brenna Farmer, she got there early and she stayed for the entire meeting, which lasted till almost 10 o'clock something. But it was a lot of discussion in terms of number 4. That was and the housing issue. Anyway, Dr. Brenna Farmer came to tell us about the Lower Manhattan is doing a lot of wonderful things with their telemedicine. They have a wonderful app that you can actually, it's one of the first apps that I ever been on, that you don't have to sign up your life in order to get in to see what's going on with the app. But if you have a minute, you should download it. It's the NYP Connect app, and you can actually get a pass to go into the hospital on your app, and you can also find out a lot of the services that they have. But they do a lot of telemedics now, and they also have, and I will be sending it around to, and you might have received a copy already of the full virtual health and wellness lecture series that they have. And I know with COVID, we're all on our computers and everything is being done through WebEx and Zoom, and this is just something else to go through one of those channels. But they have a lot of interesting programs that you can do at your leisure, and it's for the entire community and everybody. You just look and see what you're interested in, and you can go and take advantage of it. But I want to try to get them to come back and do a more extensive visit, but
When we have a shorter agenda.
Well, or different topics anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Mariama, did you want to add anything? No? Okay.
Her hand is raised. She's got to
I did
unmute.
actually. I had my hand up.
Oh.
Thanks. While we're on the topic of the racism that we've been working on, I just feel like it's important to point out instances of systemic racism and implicit bias. And one is in an item that was discussed earlier in the Waterfront and Parks Committee. Paul went over damages that had been occurred at City Hall. It was not necessarily clear, or at least I didn't hear it, that a lot of the damage that was caused there was caused by NYPD, and it was caused to the Blue Zone, and in some cases permanent damage, far more extensive and expensive than any of the graffiti, which was, took all of 2 days to wash off. And the reason why I'm mentioning it in the context of racism is because much of the community was in an uproar when we had the graffiti, and understandably so. I don't deny that, but not knowing at all how this other damage was caused or by whom, it creates an image that these people over here damage things and make a mess, and that's who's responsible for that, all that sort of thing, and others don't. It paints a very uneven picture. So in the interest of equity and fairness, I just wanted the community to be aware that that damage didn't just pop up. A lot of it is from the police parking on City Hall.
It's an important thing you raised, Mariama. Thank you.
All right.
Mariama,
Bruce has his hand up, and Vicky.
Okay.
I just want to thank the committee and Mariana and Pat for taking on this subject and making us part of that conversation. So kudos to you. Thank you.
We'll try to keep it up. Vicky?
Vicky, did you have your hand up still, or nope, it's down? So I think with no other questions or comments, Pat, thank you very, very much as always. Oh wait, Bruce, Mariama, are you good, or did you have anything else?
I'm driving. I keep hitting the hit.
She's driving as usual.
No problem. Gotcha. All right. So without further ado, let's move on. And Fern Cunningham's going to take land use, zoning, and economic development. Small business.
Yep.
It's going to be Colin. So we're going to go 1 and then 2. All right.
Okay. Hi. So this, I have to apologize. That was a very long meeting. It was the first one I chaired and probably will never be allowed to chair again. But I thought the topics were really important and everybody was really passionate, and it was really kind of hard to cut people off. So if I'm ever allowed to chair again, I'll try and be more ruthless. And
don't worry.
So I will kind of atone for that, though, by speeding up this report. Okay, so, first topic was EDC came to talk to us about leasing and management at the South Street Seaport, which of course generated a lot of discussion. Oh, right, Diana's like showing the slides. And it's basically, there were a lot of questions and discussions about that because of how the community's idea of the marketplace lease versus Howard Hughes's idea of the marketplace lease has, their implementation or plans are very different than what the community originally thought. It's changed over time. So that generated a lot of discussion, questions, and so on. And then we moved on to the future of 250 Water Street, which also generated a lot of discussion and is actually what led to the resolution that we have for you tonight. And hopefully you all read it, and if you have questions, I'll probably toss it to Paul. The other, do we want to look at this now, or?
Yeah, let's do this one by one. So
okay,
the first topic was the South Street zoning. You've already done the leasing and asset management report. Let's see if anybody has any questions on the new market or the asset management. I see none. Perfect. So let's go for the resolution. Diana, can you, go ahead, Joe.
Why did 6 people abstain from this resolution?
Because at the meeting, they didn't have a chance to see it. We didn't have it up on the screen. And so people said that they abstained until they could read it.
It was that, I was one of the people who was abstained, that it wasn't clear what I was voting on. I was not quite.
Something clear to me that abstentions count as no votes. Is that correct?
In a tie, it does, only in a tie.
Joe, the resolution did pass the committee, so it's before the board.
And Joe, let's be clear. The resolution, when it's voted on in committee, is not the official vote of the board. The official vote of the board is taken at full board. That is what's circulated.
I understand that.
Madam Chair, a quick point of information with regard to abstentions. It doesn't matter whether it's a tie or not. They count more or less as a no vote because it's no versus weighted against yes. So they're not only counted as a no and a tie.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
You're welcome.
Is there any need for me to explain anything about this? Do you want me to give a 2-minute summary of what this issue is so people understand, or does everyone get it?
What was the committee vote, Paul?
I think it was 7-6, something like that.
Well,
very close.
Well, I think it would be helpful for you to summarize the gist of the resolution.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Everybody hold on, stop.
I didn't give up the floor yet.
Joe, you've got the floor. Nobody answers back and forth because otherwise we're going to be here 12 hours.
Thank you. So the committee vote was 6-6, which means the committee, whatever, voted against it, but thanks to one public.
Joe, it was 7-6.
Not on my. Can I finish?
Yes.
And if not for the one public vote, the vote would have been defeated. So I don't know what's going on there. That's all.
Okay, should I go?
Let's go through it. You go first, and then I'm going to call on Colin, and then I'm going to call on Alice.
Okay, so as you heard from some of the people in the public session, this is an important component for the community board to present an alternative plan for the seaport. As we all probably are aware by now, Howard Hughes has come out with their plan that calls for 2 high-rise buildings of roughly 47 floors or something like that in the Seaport Historic District. This community board is on record saying, no, we don't want anything above 120 feet. So in trying to come up with methods to create an alternative plan, first of all, everything that Howard Hughes is proposing violates the zoning and also runs counter to how the Seaport has worked since 1972. In 1972, the Seaport was the first area set up to have these receiving sites and it set a precedent in the city. The city wanted to preserve the low scale in the district, and in doing so, they created this system whereby property owners were allowed to move their property values or their land use development rights out of the district. So that's been on record, and it's been working since 1972. This board got a presentation in 2015 of probably a half a dozen or more examples of this working, where hundreds of thousands of these square feet of these development rights were sold off to these sites outside the historic district. Howard Hughes is proposing something completely different, which is to move the development rights into the historic district, which would obviously create an out-of-scale building. So we're trying to suggest there is an alternative. In fact, we've already been approached by one developer at 72 Nassau who's expressed interest in purchasing some of these development rights. The City Planning Commission has the power, and they have in the past created these so-called receiving sites throughout Community Board 1. Some still exist, but we think by creating additional ones, it would make it easier to sell off those development rights. And we would even encourage Howard Hughes to sell off theirs or transfer them out of the historic district. So that's what the resolution is all about. It's something this community board already supported when they went on record supporting the Seaport Coalition strategic plan. That was part of it. Tammy and I and others have had meetings discussing this concept with elected officials. So this is really nothing new. This has been around, as I said, since 1972. Just want to officially go on record saying this is a better plan for the seaport, and it would preserve the low scale character while at the same time allowing for monies for the museum and affordable housing to be built outside the historic district and other improvements in the area. Now, I did also put a couple of very small changes into the resolution that I can present right now, if you'd like, in response to a couple of comments that were made by committee members and others. Do you want me to go through that? It's pretty quick.
Please do. Yes, that is important because we are on record from what was discussed briefly in committee. So it's important that you go through the changes that were done since then. And then it's going to be Colin, Alice, and Mariama.
Diana, by chance, do you have that resolution with the edits that I put in that I sent to you?
I do. Give me one moment to pull it up.
Paul, what do you need? Can you repeat it?
What's that?
It's amendments to the resolution. I have it. I just had to go grab it.
I do have it, but I'd like to show it to people. All right, let me quickly start going through it.
Give her a second. She's putting it up now.
Okay, great.
Is this it?
Scroll down and we'll see if there's any changes on the side or edits in it. I keep going down. Yes, this is it. Okay. So the first change that I put in is in that whereas as you can see with the red lettering here, whereas the South Street Seaport Historic District has long had a mechanism in place to allow for the transfer of unused development rights from the Historic Seaport District to, and I just added the word, designated receiving sites, just to clarify what we're talking about. I don't think that's very controversial. I hope not. Could we keep going down? Okay. Now, I put this one in the last whereas because a couple of people pointed out to me that the language that I had in the second be it resolved, where I suggested, you know, we should move the development rights outside the historic district to create additional affordable housing, et cetera, outside. I want to make it clear that we do not oppose and would support, you know, affordable housing within the historic district, as long as it's not built above the allowable zoning. Okay, so that's what that's all about. And then going down to the resolve clauses. Okay, if anyone has questions, let me know. And going down to the resolve clauses, I had some objections, particularly from Alice, with the word monetizing that I had used in the original resolution. So I changed that and removed it. And I, as you can see, I used supports transferring development rights in these two resolve clauses. The resolution is pretty similar. I did also remove the other mentions of sites that could possibly be receiving sites because I think it would be simpler to just move it along and not be so specific.
Okay, let's hit the questions. Colin, you're first.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to ask, Paul, is if this is really complex stuff, and it took me a while to get there, but I just want to say publicly, I'm there. I probably started the abstention mess in the original vote, but I changed from abstention to supporting it. And I want to speak publicly in support of this, but maybe I can try it for you. What you're essentially saying is the air development rights can stick generally in one region, but this would allow them to move it outside that region, and we're in essence taking a little bit of power away from Howard Hughes to build a gargantuan tower. Is that a simple version of this?
Well, the bottom line is they were never allowed to add put a receiving site inside the historic district or to add these development rights there. That's what Howard Hughes is proposing to do.
Yeah.
And we just think there are alternate solutions to move those development rights and pay for the needed improvements to the community.
Yep. So I just want to speak in firm support of this. We need weapons in the fight against what's going to be a huge project. I think this is a very good one.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. Alice, you're next.
And
then Andrew.
Oh, I want to thank Paul for entertaining some of this discussion and amendments. I think that I'm in full support of it. I think what we learned from this is simply that all resolutions, and this one was a particularly complex and important one, must be discussed fully and written in committee. I think that is why we see the abstention answer to Joe's question, and that would have been avoided had Paul and all of us had the time to really review this and go over this. So thanks, Paul, and I'm in full support.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Andrew?
So two questions, and I'm not sure I'll ask the first question correctly, but is there a dispute between the current zoning within the historic Seaport District and what can happen as of right on this location? And then my second question is it implied or is it explicitly stated somewhere that we're seeking to have those air rights transferred within CB1 as opposed to elsewhere in the city? or we don't care?
All right, the first question is, those are the same things, to build as of right or to build according to the zoning. They mean the same thing.
So it's not the case that, I thought there was a point in time where Howard Hughes was pointing out that as of right allowed them to build a building higher than 120 feet. So I must have misunderstood that, correct?
Yeah, the zone specifically says 120 feet.
Got it, okay.
Andrew, you good?
Now, my second question?
And what about?
Do we care if those, are we seeking that those air rights, the transfer of those air rights stay within CB1, or we don't care where they move to?
I don't think we care, but I don't think it would behoove us to try to tell Board 3, for example, why don't you take our development rights, from the seaport so we could put a huge building in your community. So I don't really think that's a sensible strategy. Again, this has been in place since 1972. All the sites that exist and that have been used in the past are within C1.
Andrew, if I can just help.
Nope.
Air
Vicky, hang
transfer
on.
rights. No, I was just going to tell him air transfer rights have rules, and it's hard to transfer them across town. They only really are supposed to work on the same block. So if we want to make a big change, it would probably involve other agencies.
Well, just to clarify that, there are a number of other districts, like the Theater District, like the Chelsea West District, like the Hudson Square District, where they do have plans, just like they have at the Seaport, where they move the development rights to sites not immediately adjacent. So you're right. Generally speaking, that's the rule, but they have these other special transfer districts.
And Tammy, sorry, what was underpinning my question, if the air rights were to be transferred, say, to another neighborhood outside of CB1, while it would seem a long shot, I'm just wondering if it could result in someone making a claim that the financial benefit should also move into that community as opposed to stay within CB1.
I don't know. I didn't think of that. And again, we're just trying to solve one problem, not problems across the city.
Yeah.
We're trying to.
Yep, I get it.
Exactly.
I'm with
Okay. Andrew, you good then?
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. Mariama and then Bob Schneck.
Yeah, mine is just a comment. This is not my wheelhouse, zoning, and I trust and yield to my colleagues here on the board in regard to that. But I had a similar thought to the resident that spoke earlier. I couldn't help but note how devoid of Black history, African American history, slavery was in the conversation, and we were in fact part of the commerce that used to come in through the seaport. So I think we'll also talk about historic district. That we need to, what historic district are we talking about, or what history are we talking about? We need to begin to tell the complete story of the history. And I would hope that whoever, whatever entity ultimately is contracted to build this area, zone it, not rezone it, whatever, that they would take that into consideration. I think the board would insist that they do start to incorporate the entire history, the totality of the history into the conversation, calling it a historic district. Also, to Howard Hughes' credit, as a Black woman living in this district, I can tell you corporations that provide specific programming to Black people, to LGBTQ community, if you want to go into intersectionality of it all as well. I don't know what else good they do or don't do. They could be otherwise horrible, but to their credit, Howard Hughes does put on that type of programming. I can't go to, let's say, Brookfield and find that. Currently, at least. Maybe they want to hear this and get it started. But right now, it's only there. So I just hope that into the
from now on. Thank you.
Okay, Bob Schneck.
Okay, I suppose my concern is I really appreciate the amount of effort the Community Board 1 over time put into the zoning for the special area of the seaport. But I have to admit, I'm tempted by some of the perks that are available. So the idea that we would leave, that this resolution leaves the perks on the table and we enforce these ideas here. Where do the perks go in this arrangement?
I think the point of the resolution is that we can get the perks without the tower. If we use the air rights outside the historic district. There are developers elsewhere in Lower Manhattan who would want these air rights, and therefore we can spend, I think we should earmark the money specifically for a fund to benefit the museum and other needs of this district, and we could easily do that. I don't think you should be hoodwinked into thinking that the Howard Hughes plan is the only way to accomplish this. Now, I know your wife works with a council member who seems supportive of this, Bob, but I hope you could take an open stance on this and look at it, as an alternative way to fund the seaport. But I think will work better.
I think the thing is, I want to agree with you, but I have to admit that I would like to see other developers, kind of making offers or the thing in play, or feel like there were really alternative possibilities. But that's
there have
in
been.
the future.
There have been.
Well, 30
Bob,
people.
All right, hold on. I need to mute somebody who's out there making more noise. But Bob, there has been. So
Can you reveal what they were at all?
that's not for me to reveal. That's for the developer to reveal. You can certainly check in with the council member who was there and their team. They know that was it's not a community board thing. It's the council member knows, and there was a discussion that we were aware of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Susan Cole.
I just want to say, I think Paul's point is well taken, and what he just answered Bob with, and I'm in support of this. I think it gives us a little clout, and we shouldn't give it away. That's all.
Sounds good. Okay, after Susan, I think we are done with all the hand raised, and I think we should.
I have a quick one. I'm up. My hand is up very quick. Is that okay?
Bruce, you snuck it in right before I could call the question. Man, you got
No,
me.
it was while Bob was talking. I'll be very quick. I usually am aligned with Bob. I just think Paul did a great job on this extremely difficult issue. I would change in the be it further resolved that I would just eliminate the word any after transfer. It's almost, it's over the top. The other thing I want to say is that we had a discussion, I don't remember whether it was the executive committee, perhaps so, just in terms of the Seaport Museum. It has been an ongoing issue since I've been on the community board, and at this moment in time, it needs to be said that while I support their existence, I don't think the world has to tilt on its axis because of the Seaport Museum. As we have said, or I have said, it is about the whitest museum in New York City. The board is, the displays are, someone mentioned at this meeting earlier, there's no input about slavery or black dock workers, nothing. It's just some kind of Williamsburg colonial conception of, our seaport history. That's all. I'm not condemning it. I just don't think we should spend another 20 years figuring out how this narrow little thing should get funded.
Can I call the question?
God bless you, Susan. I second that. All right. So with that in case, everybody's hands are down, question's been called, it's been seconded, we're gonna roll the way we did before. So if everyone is on the call, Mark, I see that you're back, which means you have to unmute and vote because you were not here before, as far as we know. Orally, so I will assume everyone is a yes. If you are a no, you unmute yourself and you say your name and the vote. If you need to abstain, you must do the same. So in that case, are there any no's?
Kettering abstains.
Kettering abstains. Are there any other abstentions or recusals? Mark, are you back?
Oh, yes, so.
So you're a yes?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, but because you weren't here before, we need to vote for your, you need to vote just because of attendance.
No problem.
You're here.
Yes.
All right, so motion passes. Thank you very, very much. Paul, it was a lot of work. I really appreciate it. Alice, point well taken. We'll try and do drafts in committee with it up. Again, this goes back to land use is going to be one heck of a long meeting for the next 4 months. So buckle up, everybody. Vern, take it away.
Okay, so the next topic was Governor's Island. Lovely view of it there. But the presentation had about 85 slides. It was a really long presentation, so I'll just give you the highlights here. I just wanted to mention, of course, that they had come to community board, I think in September, and you know, as a precursor to their plans. But subsequently, like a couple days later after, you know, coming to us, there was a more extensive view of what their plans were that was in the press. So we asked them to come back. So we and give us some more details because that took a bunch of people by surprise. So today, when they came last week, it was really to present a fuller picture. There's a couple of other upcoming meetings as well. I think they need to, they're going to come back and see us in November. There's going to be a special meeting for that where we talk about the things that we saw at the meeting last week. And then they will be at the land use meeting on November 9th. Which will have and then present, you know, the more details, the review of their environmental impact statement and financial details. Diana, you can go to the next slide. They talked a little bit about the zoning of the rezoning of the South Island proposal. They gave us an overview of that. Basically, I think most of you are aware of all of this stuff. You can go to the next slide, Diana. And if not, you have it in, you know, you'll have the materials. They showed the map in terms of the zoning changes, the current map versus the proposed changes. You can go to the next slide unless somebody wants to look at this a little bit longer. Sorry about background noise. And then they gave us the overview of the list of uses allowed by the proposed rezoning, which I cannot read. And I won't bother reading that all to you since you will have the materials. Basically, is that the last slide or is there another one? Yep.
One of the things I'm going to point out is we have this. It is,
okay.
Everything is on our website and the presentations, but one of the things when you're looking at where it says allowed under deed or prohibited by deed, that's actually not accurate because the deed restrictions expire.
Correct.
So that's a major piece of brand new information that we didn't have until this month.
Right, and we learned that they expire in probably 2062 or something. That was a bit surprising. I think that was something that took everybody by surprise.
Can you say that again, Tammy? I don't think I understood.
Okay, so the deed restrictions, Diana, can you go back where it says deed restrictions under use? I think it's one. So you see that there are all these uses that are allowed by proposed zoning. There were lots of conversations that were not allowed. Now go to the next slide. Where it says rentals, market, and affordable co-ops and condos prohibited by deed, not allowed on. It's uses, but only for a certain period of time. So if a developer bought the land, they could build condos or any of the other prohibited uses potentially in 2060 or 2062, whatever they. And while they are limited, so residential is limited, it's still 700,000 square feet of residential, which is something that the community board has long said we didn't want. And that's a topic that needs to come up, and it's a long discussion because we had always said, as Alice is infamous for quoting, this is one of the greatest public amenities that this city has, and we didn't want to see it privatized. So we didn't want it to turn into a casino and condos, or an island for the wealthy because the public space gets squeezed out. And that's to truthfully understand that the community has long fought for, and we need to include that into the dialogue about rezoning and anything that goes ahead on the island. Go ahead. Sorry, Fern.
Yep. No, that's perfect. Thank you, Tammy. I mean, that was one of the reasons that there were so many questions. I guess a lot of information came out that I guess we were unaware of. I guess finally, after we had, after that shocker, this is I think a shot of what they think with the development of the South Island, that Governor's Island could look like. Very different from the first slide. Yeah. So, yeah, lots of questions based on what they shared.
I've got Andrew. Are you done? Because I see hands going up.
Yep, that was the last slide. I didn't want to, we didn't want to go through all 85 of them. So it's
exactly
before and after and needed the discussion. So.
Andrew?
Tammy and Fern, I see that on the agenda for November 9th is a financial updater report. I'm wondering if that same report is appropriate for the special CB1 meeting on the 2nd?
It's a good question. What the CB1 meeting on the 2nd is supposed to go over. They didn't actually get to the financial or the resiliency at the last meeting. So the programming and other conversations about that are supposed to happen on the 2nd. Let's see what else is on there. Sorry.
And the reason why I think that's important, the whole genesis of this is to provide sustainable financing for the island. So understanding, I think, their financial profile and situation, I think, is important at the meeting on the 2nd.
I have no troubles asking for them to add that in there. That's completely fine with me. For our purposes, the most that we can understand that, I've made that perfectly clear, to understand what minimum density is required for sustainability over how long of a period of time. I asked if there was anything on file at Scott Stringer's office. this and was told not yet, or they don't have anything. So those fiscal projections, I think, could inform a lot of conversation. And I'm hoping to get those answers as well. And we can certainly ask for that before the ULERP presentation comes.
Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome. Susan? Susan Cole, your hand's up.
I think we have to be very careful on this one, that we don't get hoodwinked, because we have to watch the city, we have to watch everybody. That's all I want to say. We just have to be very, very careful.
I don't disagree with you on that at all. Okay, Susan, I've got Alice. Do you want to add anything? By the way, I should announce that Alice will be our new Community Board 1 representative to work with Governor's Island, the trust. Alice,
Thank
you. Want
you.
to add anything?
Not at this point. I just want to thank you, Tammy. I will do my best to represent the community well there. And just also, in addition to what Andrew is bringing up in terms of the finances, which is critical, we're also going to be updated on the north part of the island, which we've yet to hear anything about. Though it's not being rezoned, there is plenty of development that's going to be happening. So, to be continued. Thanks.
Okay. Alrighty. So with that, Fern, do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope, if there are no questions, that's it for me.
This is Wendy. I had a question that relates to the Harbor School earlier. Was there any linkage about the funding for the pool and the diving site that they want for the Harbor School, which, you know, as I remember, that came up with Brian Kavanaugh a couple years ago on a site that's on the north side that they were proposing. I don't know what's happening with that. I think the school construction was, you know, trying to get capital money for that. Is that related in any way to the development at this point? Are they tied in any way, or did that not come out?
I know there were parents there from the Harbor School who talked about it. I don't recall, concerns.
Fern, it's Andrew. If I'm not mistaken, and I might have been, but I thought in response to that question, they mentioned that there was a building, I think, adjacent to or behind the current Harbor School that was earmarked for their expansion, and they were going to double back with the school construction authority to see where that all stood.
That's a different building, Andrew. So when so there's an expansion building across the way from the Harbor School, which is a regular building that could be an additional school building, but the site that they were looking at for the pool was actually closer to the Welcome Center and closer to the they have two sites on the island. It's closer to their current dive center. So it actually wasn't the same building.
That's why we listed it as two separate budget request items, because they're not in the same building. So they have it as two separate. Their building that they currently have is classrooms only, and the expansion was for another classroom building to expand their programming in classrooms, with the pool being completely separate. If that explains it all. And Andrew, they will be coming back on November 2nd as well. After, hold on, Andy, it's Vicky, and then Justine. Wendy, you
Thank
good?
you. Well, I am good, because it sounds like I just wondered if they're waiting on the funding as part of this development, or if that funding is coming from a different stream. But we don't know the answer to that. That will be a future question. Thank you.
Okay, Vicky.
My comments, my fellow CB1, at this meeting, I realized, following a couple of meetings, that one of the things that was really perturbing me was the fact that the South Development had a completely different architectural expression from the northern part. And what I mean by that is all this glass and steel and to use the word modernist stuff, whereas the entire northern part is masonry buildings, brick and stone. And so I just in long-term planning, for me, this proposal of making this mini Manhattan was like Vegas, one of everything. But if the future development had put into their deed that everything that was built in terms of architectural expression should follow in some manner what has already been established on this island, I think that would not only be an appropriate solution, possibly it would be something different for New York City. It would give us a better experience on a humanist level. And also it would preclude in 2060 the rush to go out there and just build what I know is happening in my industry as fast and cheap as you can do it, just to get your profit out. So I encourage everyone to think about this, and it's especially evident when you see it in overall plans and bird-eye views, where the top part is almost belonging to a completely different place from what they're proposing on the back side. Anyway, that was my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. I absolutely heard what you said. Steve and then Bob Schneck.
Thanks so much. Vicki, thank you, because you've got like the architect's eye on stuff as the rest of the people in your committee do, and I would not have noticed that. So thanks for that, and I appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you.
And also, though, to add on to what Wendy was saying about the school building and the pool, what the folks came on in the public session asking about, can't we do, besides the budget request, can we do a resolution in that committee? I'm not even part of that committee, but I would suggest perhaps doing something stronger and saying, and we may have addressed this before, but saying that we want this done on Governor's Island, and maybe even throwing in there something about what Vicki said. But that's for you guys in the committee to decide. But the school part of it, for the harbor school and the pool, I'm making a vote to you guys talk about.
I believe, Justine, I believe that was done already in Youth and Ed some time ago.
I think
so
we
we'll
need to do it
revisit
again.
it. Yep.
Yeah, I think we could, because I do recall it as something that was talked about, but I think we need to do it again. But thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to actually read you something that the Harbor School folks had sent me. The Harbor School had proposed to the trust that they get a 10-year option on the historic structure known as the hospital building, which would allow them to get the necessary funding, an estimated $50 million, in combination of public and private partnerships that would include both DOE, private foundations, and the maritime industry, which assume the DOE's present promise that their current building is upheld and allow for the other building as well to support the structure of the growth of the school. So that is the update that I have from them. And I do think that that will be taken up in Youth and Ed. It could be taken up next month in Youth and Ed. So it happens alongside of the zoning conversations. And Bob Schneck, you're next.
Here tonight, I think, right? We have our great White House doctors traveling. Sean has become
I
very
don't know who I have to mute, but I gotta mute somebody. Bob,
Mute
you're on.
Matt especially.
Sean.
Yep. Okay.
Movie?
Somebody's listening to cartoons. Bob, you're on.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered whether or not that whole space with those buildings on it is a separate campus, and is the public allowed in that space? How is the public treated vis-a-vis these developments?
You can walk through and around the building, but you can't go in unless you got purpose. They'll be private buildings. It'll be either whatever they can garner for the island.
So are those buildings actually the ones as planned, or they're looking for they're looking for one or more interested parties to decide what they want. This is just an example of what might be.
Correct. One or more interested parties.
Okay, and that thing that looks a little bit like a marina, that the idea would be a private marina like that too?
That's a great question. They haven't said, but that's a great question that we need to ask. And I would say Fern has to put it on her list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Wendy, you still have your hand up. Are you good?
About that.
Okay. I hope everybody comes November 2nd. If you care about the island, tell every one of your friends to come November 2nd. The most amount of public engagement we can get, the better off we will be. And with that note, I turn it to Small Business Working Group. Hello, Colin.
Hi, I'll be super fast. It's already 9:30. I wish we had more time because if you ask me, this is the most important thing we all should be focused on right now, but I'll be quick because it's already 9:30. Diana did a really great job getting some bigwigs from the city. I won't go through all of them right now. I initially wanted to have a meeting that was about what's the next step, how do you recover, how do you ensure long-term sustainability for businesses that got hit hard but survived. And unfortunately, what it turned into was a sobering roundtable on what these businesses are really facing right now and the failure somewhere in the 80% range of businesses in the next few months. So with that, we have a few resolutions we're going to push through for next month. Thank you especially to Tom Burton for some of his experiences on the ground with his own small business. But I just want to use 2 seconds to plead for people who are interested in this to come to these meetings. Everyone's voice is valued, but especially those who are on the ground getting hit by this. Small business owners, we need you. We need your thoughts because this is a long way from done.
Okay, that's it. All right, we love that. We're going to go back to Youth and Ed, and we're going to have Jen, who was our office team, present a quick update for Youth and Ed, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do my best to just run through it quickly. I'm going to go by order. So number 1, updates on remote learning and planning for 2020 and 21. I would say that the first report goes hand in hand with the 4th item you see there on the agenda. Catherine Marrow from DOE, she works with the Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support. She was able to join us and just really do a Q&A and respond to a number of the concerns that parents who were at the meeting had about their child's remote learning and some of the challenges that would arise from synchronous online instruction. I won't be able to fill in as much information as Trisha would, unfortunately, but I would say that the committee does intend to carry on this conversation for the next couple of months as the DOE continues to evolve their game plan for both in-person and online instruction for the rest of the academic year. Number 2, Senator Kavanaugh Town Hall on Young People's Civic Engagement. That was an interactive event held last month for teens and young adults to learn and find ways really on how they can become civic leaders in their communities. Really, it was just an opportunity for youth to explore how they can develop and hone in their civic engagement skills so that they can partake in a number of important conversations, whether that be in a political space or civic space. And on to number 3, DOE review of ventilation requirements in school buildings. We had John Shea, who was the DOE Chief Executive Officer. He works with the Division of School Facilities. He was able to join us and answer some of the specific questions a few members and parents had surrounding school ventilation requirements. A few fun facts just throw out there. He mentioned how really air filters are being used as a mitigation measures. New things that we learned, for example, in part of the air quality testing for schools, schools custodians are provided with an indoor air quality monitor, and readings are taken outside of the school building. If a teacher notifies the custodian that they believe that their classroom is not getting enough airflow, then a reading will also be done inside the classroom with the teacher and students inside. And then after that, those two readings are then compared, and if the results are within an acceptable range, then that custodian can confirm that the ventilation system in place is working. So that's for number 3. And the 5th item is just a recap of news from last month. I believe it was also discussed at last month's full board. Pretty much SAA has started construction that was put on hold for the Trinity School. That it was put on hold back in March of this year. And really the only challenge left is the funding, the rest of the funding, which is expected to be approved by OMB. The status that was given last month was that they have acquired a contractor to mobilize the construction. And at this month's committee meeting, the most recent update that was given to us was that they released a construction team to resume construction, and that's about it. I apologize if I spoke too fast.
It's okay. I think you're good. We have any questions, any hands? Seeing none, let's move on. Thank you very much, Jen, for stepping in for Jeff and Tricia tonight. We're going to move
Jamie, we
to
have two more reports, two more committees. Is that it?
Yeah, correct. We have Susan Cole in licensing who's going to take us home. And she has, the last one will be a roll call, which is proposed guidelines for liquor license on rooftops and terraces as new business. So licensing takes us home.
All right, here we go. First, everybody should go see Pier 26. It's fabulous. Next, 25 Broad Street and 95 South Street are the two resolutions. If you read them, we can vote on them. 95 is Bridgeview. It's they're expanding. It's temporary for now, so they can seat more people and put them outdoors and put them up. We had no trouble with it. The other was 25 Broad, which was, I'm blanking the restaurant, the former restaurant's name. It's that whole area at Broad and Exchange Place, and we didn't have any trouble with it either. But we did. So those are the two resolutions. We can take a vote on them very quickly, unless anybody has any questions, and I'll do my quick reports, and then the third, which will lead into our last resolution.
Seeing no hands and a call for the question, seconded. So again, this one is regular because the last one is roll call. So assuming that all are yays, are there any noes?
Sorry, Tammy, quick point of information. Are you grouping these?
I am grouping them, yes.
Thank you.
It's only 2. Thank you so much. Are there any noes? Are there any abstentions? Any recusals? Fantastic. Susan, you're on for new business. And this
Well, no, I
roll
just
call.
want to go to the old reports that we get a lot of complaints around noise in Mary Ann's and various places. We tell people to call 311. Some of it is liquor, some of it's not. It's, you know, this expansion, people aren't used to the outdoor spaces. So we've been trying to work on it. And Ann Street, there's a new ownership, there's a changeover, and he promised he's going to change the music and make nice for the neighbors. So that's basically, we do listen to all the complaints and we try to respond to it the best that we can. We don't have a lot of power at this moment. All right, new business. So on that, we asked, there was an alteration for 70 Pine Street. And we get a lot of alterations. We had passed in July of 2019 which you have in front of you as the last resolution. We passed 42, I don't know, there was a 42 in favor about guidelines for rooftops and terraces. When I called Jeff Ehrlich and we read it over, it was totally incomprehensible. So in the light of what's been going on with people using terraces and drinking and all kinds of things, we set up this, we cleaned up basically the old proposed resolution that we had done in 2019. We did the content. The whereases are basically the same. We did not change them. So I am presenting it to you. I hope you've read them. The committee let me rewrite it. They agreed with me that it needed to be redone. It was really incomprehensible. So that's what we've done, and trying to give us a little more clout on terraces and balconies. The end.
Okay, Brittany, take us home. You're roll calling it.
So
Sorry,
again,
Tammy.
say
Sorry,
your-
Tammy. I put my hand up. One quick question.
Yes.
Oops, sorry, go for it.
No, I'm sorry. It was late. So when we talk about rooftops and terraces, we're referring to open air or not necessarily?
Well, basically, it is mostly open air. If there are windows out, Andrew, where it affects people who live around there, and the noise and whatever happens, and we walk a fine line on what we can do around what the SLA approves and what they don't, and that was the purpose of trying to write this.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that, Andrew. I don't see any other hands up. So I'm going to say, let's call the question. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Brittany, take us home.
Yeah, let's go.
Great. If you could say your last name, then your vote again, that'd be great. Amoruso,
Yes.
you, Blank,
Yes.
Brown Kennedy,
Brown Kennedy, yes.
Cameron,
Cameron, yes.
Cassell,
Estelle, yes.
Kang,
And yes.
Chapman,
And yes.
Cole,
Susan Cole, yes.
Kuchar,
Kuchar, yes, thank you.
Cunningham,
Yes. Cunningham, yes.
thank you. Curtis,
Curtis, yes.
Airman, Airman,
Airman, yes.
Flynn,
Flynn,
Flynn. Yeah. Yes, Flynn. Mimi?
yes, for Flynn.
Her,
McCursey, yes.
you, Friedman,
Yes, Friedman.
Froman,
Froman, yes.
Away,
Galloway, yes.
Goldstein,
Golds, yes.
Gupta,
Gupta, yes.
James,
James, yes.
Kay, Kay,
Yes.
Mel,
Canel, yes.
Tring,
Kettering, yes.
Capel, Capel,
Capella's off.
okay.
He just texted me.
Clementis,
Off.
off, okay, great. Lamoury,
Lemery, yes.
Lerner,
Yes.
Lewinson,
Lewinson, yes.
Mahoney,
Mahoney, no.
McHugh,
McHugh, yes.
Meltzer,
Meltzer, yes.
Mahalski,
Mahalski, yes.
Moore,
Moore, yes.
Notaro, Notaro,
Off.
okay. Schneck,
Schneck, yes.
Star, Star,
Yes, yes. Sorry, I was muted. Sorry.
no worries, thanks. Sung,
Sung, yes.
Wade, yes. Weinstock. Okay. Shu. Shu.
If the last name is XIE, yes.
XIE, yes. How do you pronounce it?
Z.
Z. Okay, got it. I'll get that for next time. Zelter.
Zelter, yes.
Any wines?
No, she's not here.
Okay, that's everyone. Thank you, everyone.
So I want to say thank you to everybody tonight. I think that if I have a motion to adjourn, then that makes our community
I will
board
make
meeting
a motion to adjourn.
awesome. Perfect. So it is 9:39 with some incredibly complex topics tonight. Thank everybody for their participation and their time. I'm going to go have a cocktail and have some dinner. I hope you all do too. Thank you very much. And
See you
we are
tomorrow.
adjourned.
Thank you.
I'm going for the ice
Yeah.
cream.
Take
See
care.
you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Tammy, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I'm here.